Chapter 3981. Just as Xiaohua was about to move, Xiaohua's voice rang out. Don't be impatient, fellow Taoist I. This should be the Soul Cultivator ruins covered in seawater. You're in a spirit body right now. If you're attacked by a hidden soul formation, you'll suffer immeasurable damage. Why don't we go together after my body is repaired? Xiaohua shrunk his neck and stuck out his tongue like a child who was caught doing something naughty. He smiled embarrassedly and said, Whatever you say, fellow Taoist. Now that Xiaohua had woken up, the heavenly phoenix Xiaohua and the devil spirit Xiaohua had also woken up. They began to cast their own secret techniques to complement the green-robed Xiaohua's lightning technique, and began to repair their bodies. Xiaohua was worried about the soul cultivator Xiaohua, so he hurriedly sent his consciousness into the mysterious dark cloud. After entering the soul seal sky, he discovered that although the soul cultivator Xiaohua had almost disappeared, and only a faint green core was left, this green core was obviously much more solid than before. Furthermore, inside the soul seal sky, the green seal script of the Magus Codex was constantly entangling the green core with countless soul strands. It seemed that as long as there was enough time, the soul cultivator Xiaohua would recover sooner or later. Xiaohua was relieved, but Little White Dragon was still complaining about Xiaohua, as if soul cultivator Xiaohua was his childhood sweetheart. It seemed to be very distressed. Xiaohua naturally told Little White Dragon what happened. Little White Dragon knew that soul cultivator Xiaohua's words and actions were correct, and that the flickering green core of soul cultivator Xiaohua made Little White Dragon somewhat fearful. Therefore, Little White Dragon only warned him a few times and didn't say anything else. Xiaohua came out of the mysterious cloud and focused on repairing his body. He was seriously injured this time, and it was somewhat similar to the monster race in Feather Spirit Bay. Xiaohua wouldn't be easily injured, but if he was injured, it would be very troublesome to repair. It took him 100 days to repair most of his body. Since there were no more obstacles, Xiaohua was ready to leave. Just as he was about to rush to the top of the abyss using the water escape technique, trouble appeared again. Under the urging of his transcendence energy, the moment his body moved, an extremely strong repulsive force appeared around him, blocking his escape. His body seemed to be pressed down by a large hand, unable to move at all. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes, looked at the seawater above his head, and circulated his soul power. Sure enough, the soul cultivator's flying technique was still effective at the bottom of the sea. When Xiaohua landed on the mountain peak and looked up, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Xiaohua naturally knew what the green-robed Xiaohua saw, but when he saw it himself, he couldn't help but feel shocked. Million Meng Mountains above the 3 continents. There are also soul cultivators' inheritances, but these inheritances have already been annihilated, and Million Meng Mountains to be buried under the North Sea. Judging from the difficulty of entering this place, I'm afraid there are not many human cultivators in this world who can enter this place. Thinking of this, Xiaohua was suddenly shocked, as he recalled the Shaman Kings of Meng Mountains. At that time, the Shaman King had given Xiaohua a crystal skull thumb ring. Elder Wu of Huta's stronghold had told him that the Shaman King wanted to see Xiaohua, and that the Shaman King was proficient in the art of divine connection. But at that time, Xiaohua didn't know that there were 3 continents in the world, and he also didn't know that after he returned from Million Meng Mountains to Imperial Thunder Sect, he didn't have the chance to go to Million Meng Mountains again. Could it be that the Shaman King of Million Meng Mountains already knew that he would come to the lost land of another soul cultivator? Xiaohua's eyes swept across the mountains. The mountains buried deep under the sea were dark and gloomy, and there was an indescribable sense of heaviness and mystery coming from them. When Xiaohua's eyes fell on the big and small mountains, and the 13 huge stone pillars, he fell into deep thought. Million Meng Mountains had 12 gods. There are 13 huge pillars here, and one of them is standing in the center, while the other 12 are surrounding it. If I'm not mistaken, there should be the ruins of the 12 gods on top of these 12 huge pillars. So what is on top of this 13th pillar? Xiaohua thought to himself. Furthermore, there is no luster on top of these big and small mountains, but why is there a luster on top of the mountain next to the 13th pillar? If I want to find out, I should check out the other mountains that don't have any luster. Having made up his mind, Xiaohua exercised his flying technique and flew toward the nearest mountain. When he landed on the top of the mountain, he saw that the top of the mountain was flat, and there was a simple and unadorned palace, about 1,000 feet in size, standing there. This palace was very similar to the Huta Palace in Huta Stronghold. However, this palace had been in ruins for a long time, and was in a complete mess. There were only some huge rocks piled up there. What was special was that when Xiaohua walked into this palace, there was also a statue of a god on top of the palace, and behind the statue was a huge stone chair. Behind the stone chair was a collapsed stone wall, and there were some traces of green seal script engraved on it. When Xiaohua saw these ruins, he naturally thought of the Huta Palace and the Thunderclap Palace in the Misty Mountain. He rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Could it be that each of these mountains represents the inheritance of a soul cultivator? There is a green seal script engraved in the palace of each mountain? When the soul cultivator ruins were flourishing, just how many soul warriors gathered here? Xiaohua immediately went back to the mountain and looked for the other palaces in the nearby mountains. The style of each palace was different, but the layout inside was similar. Xiaohua already knew that his guess was correct, and he couldn't help but look at the mountain next to the central pillar. After all, none of the mountain peaks emitted green light. This meant that the palaces on these mountains were all broken, and the green seal script engraved in them had already disappeared. If Xiaohua wanted to find the green seal script, he would have to go to this mountain peak. Xiaohua urged his soul force to protect himself, and slowly flew toward the mountain peak. Fortunately, when Xiaohua landed on the ground, he saw that the palace was also damaged, and nothing strange happened. Although the palace was damaged, and the statue inside had also collapsed, the stone chair was still in perfect condition. The stone chair faintly emitted waves of soul force that protected the surrounding 300 feet, keeping all the seawater outside of the ripples. Inside the ripples, there was a green seal script engraved on the stone wall that emitted a faint green light. When he got closer, Xiaohua could clearly see that the green light emitted by the green seal text was very strange. Every strand of light was in the shape of a spiral, and the inside of the spiral was filled with black and white. A kind of faint spatial power leaked out from time to time. Xiaohua knew that the green seal script was a type of soul technique, but when he saw the strange state of the stone chair, he couldn't help but hesitate. After hesitating for a long time, Xiaohua released his soul strands and let them fall on the ripples. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, the ripples didn't stop his soul strands at all, and allowed them to fall into the chair. When Xiaohua's soul strands touched the green seal script with trembling fear, boom, the green seal script emitted a resplendent green light, and it seemed as if it wanted to fly out from the stone wall, and an intense impact followed the soul strands into Xiaohua's mysterious dark clouds. Good Xiaohua's heart leaped with joy, knowing that the green seal script wasn't a trap, but a normal soul technique. With a word of praise, tens of thousands of soul strands rushed out again. Woo-woo, when enough soul strands fell into the green seal script, the entire green seal script escaped from the stone wall, and let out a strange groan, and began to decompose in midair. Xiaohua's soul strands didn't hesitate to touch the decomposed green seal script one by one. In the time it took to eat a meal, the entire green seal script was decomposed into over 300 basic green seal scripts. Other than the strange green seal script from before, this was the green seal script that Xiaohua had seen formed the most. When all the green seal script was lit up by Xiaohua, the green seal script suddenly began to frantically dance and combine together. Finally, the complete green seal script began to rotate with a boom sound, and strands of black and white emerged from the green seal script. Under the black and white brilliance, the tadpole-like green seal script began to tumble, swell, and swim towards the depths of space. When the green seal script began to stabilize, a transmission channel appeared in front of Xiaohua. This is a soul cultivator's transmission channel. Xiaohua was wild with joy. What a shocking soul technique this is. Just a single green seal script was able to construct the entire transmission channel. This is simply inconceivable. The transmission channel in front of Xiaohua was naturally not a real transmission channel. The end of the channel was sealed, and after Xiaohua's joy, the entire transmission channel began to rotate in the opposite direction. And in a moment, It condensed back into the huge green seal script and landed on the stone wall. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent, nor did he dare to leave the palace immediately. He sat down cross-legged, and his consciousness entered the mysterious dark clouds, turning into a jade archive. Xiaohua began to comprehend the green seal text of the transmission passage. A faint green light flickered between Xiaohua's eyebrows, like a firefly in the dark night. After a few flickers, it gradually became clear, and a tiny, almost inaudible whirlpool gradually appeared. This whirlpool continued to spin like this. After an unknown amount of time, the whirlpool finally dimmed and the green light disappeared. Xiaohua thoughtfully opened his eyes and muttered to himself, "This green seal character is the word transmission. This Confucian cultivation technique also has a nice name, south opposite north way. Heh. The common people often say that going north in opposite directions is the action of a fool, but the Confucian cultivator's way of going south in opposite directions is indeed the technique of the strong. Unfortunately, this Zhao's soul cultivation realm is still a bit lacking, and I can't recognize a few key green seal characters, so now I can't use the south opposite north way technique. However, it seems that these green seal characters are somewhat familiar. If there is no accident, they should be the ones I encountered when I entered the soul cultivator's ruins. When the soul cultivator Xiaohua's body condenses again, I should be able to comprehend those hidden green seal characters. If this Xiao succeeds in cultivating this south opposite north way technique, then with the help of the soul consciousness imprint, and this Xiao's soul cultivation primordial spirit is interconnected with the Tao primordial spirit, so there is no need for a soul consciousness imprint. Divine sense imprint and Buddhist sense imprint should also work. With these imprints, this Xiao can create a transmission channel out of thin air, and cross the void to reach the location of the imprint. The more Xiaohua thought about it, the more proud he became. This way, this Xiao won't have to painstakingly construct a transmission channel. Hey, speaking of which, isn't the soul consciousness imprint similar to the mark in the universal greater shift token? Could it be that my Tao sex transmission channel is based on the soul cultivator's transmission channel? Chapter 3982. Forget it, who cares who's first? As the saying goes, the one who reaches the apex is the master, and the student surpasses the master. Whoever can execute this spell to the extreme is the one who has the skill. Xiaohua thought, and then looked outside the palace, at the towering stone pillars that pierced into the sea. Xiaohua flew out from the palace, but he didn't fly directly to the central stone pillar. Instead, he flew to the outer stone pillar. When Xiaohua flew to the stone pillar, he could clearly see that it wasn't a stone pillar. It was clearly a huge bone pillar made of white bones. The white bones were like jade, and were not eroded by the seawater at all. When his eyes fell on it, a faint dizziness involuntarily appeared. Xiaohua didn't dare to look again. His body flew up slowly, and after flying for a while, he finally arrived at the top of the stone pillar. He saw that this was a platform with a radius of several thousand feet, and a tall palace was standing on top of it, intact. Moreover, this palace emitted a faint white color in the sea water. Whether it was the palace door or the pillars, they were all made of white bones. On these white bones, countless strange beast heads and nether beasts were engraved with an unknown method. These nether beasts were vivid and lifelike, and looked extremely terrifying. It was actually the same as the Huta Palace Xiaohua saw in the Huta Stockade in the Meng Mountains. However, this bone palace was several times larger than the previous Huta Palace. The palace door made of white bones was open, and the palace door that looked like the mouth of a beast was emitting a terrifying aura, as if it would swallow Xiaohua as soon as he approached it. Xiaohua's soul sense swept out, but the palace door blocked his soul sense, and he couldn't see the situation inside the palace. Xiaohua stood in front of the palace door, and after a little hesitation, he lifted his foot and walked in. Similarly, there was nothing unusual at the palace door. After entering the palace, Xiaohua took a deep breath. There was no seawater in this palace, and it was the same as the ancestral temple of the Huta Stockade, a huge bone palace. There were no pillars in the center of the bone palace. The roof of the palace was made of white bones and skeletons, and the ground was also made of white bones and skeletons. However, the space inside the palace was much larger than what he saw outside. Xiaohua stood in the hall almost like an ant. At the head of the hall, there was a huge throne made of bones. It was empty, and there was no statue of a god as Xiaohua had expected. Behind the throne, there was a bone ball that looked like a full moon quietly floating in the air, not moving at all. This throne of bones. Xiaohua shifted his gaze away from the bone ball and looked towards the throne of bones. He frowned slightly as he came to a realization. Could it be that the statue of a god was placed there before? The size of this space, this palace. Suddenly, Xiaohua understood and almost blurted out. Could it be that the god and devil puppets from the god and devil blood pool were the god statues enshrined in these bone palaces? The more Xiaohua thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. He immediately flew up into the air and approached the bone sphere. He was filled with anticipation. Maybe this mysterious bone sphere would bring him some unexpected surprises. The bone sphere was very big, about the size of 100 Xiaohua. Holding the densely packed skeletons on the bone sphere, and the seemingly bottomless darkness in the eyes of the skeletons, Xiaohua released his soul strands. Woo-woo, a formless cold wind suddenly blew, and a faint green light emitted from the bone ball. Moreover, as Xiaohua released even more soul strands, even more green light gradually appeared, until finally, an 8-headed, 8-legged, 8-tailed figure of the heavenly Wu great god appeared outside the bone ball. This is the palace to offer sacrifices to great god of Tianwu. Xiaohua thought inwardly. He covered the space with his consciousness and prepared to put the bone sphere into his space. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, although his consciousness covered the bone sphere, this bone sphere seemed to be 10,000 times heavier than metal and wood. Xiaohua couldn't move it at all. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and withdrew his consciousness. The soul strands began to move, and sure enough, the bone sphere moved a little. Xiaohua understood. This bone sphere was most likely a soul tool. Only soul strands could put it away. Moreover, this soul tool could only go to the mysterious dark cloud. But Xiaohua hesitated again. After all, the mysterious dark cloud was very important. If he didn't have full confidence, how could Xiaohua put this inexplicable soul tool into the mysterious dark cloud? Xiaohua thought for a moment and released the soul of Little White Dragon. However, just as Little White Dragon's soul appeared in the air, its body seemed to be burned by fire. The dragon's body twitched and it shouted loudly, "Xiaohua, quickly put me back!" Xiaohua put Little White Dragon away and his consciousness followed in. He hurriedly asked, "Little White, what's going on?" "See, you scared me to death." Little White shouted very nervously. "The aura outside is very strange. It seems like it can kill me at any time. I don't dare to stay in this aura for long. However, this aura is very strong. I feel that if I can stay in this aura for a while, my soul will definitely be more solid. I might even have other gains." So that's how it is. Xiaohua was a little depressed. "I still wanted to put this bone sphere into the soul formation sky. Since you don't even dare to touch it, how can I dare to take it?" "Take it, quickly take it. Why don't you take it?" Little White almost roared. "Is this a bone sphere? This thing must be an extremely powerful soul tool. If you take it, it will definitely be useful for your cultivation. Furthermore, if this soul tool enters the soul formation sky, I can use it to cultivate. Quickly, quickly, don't hesitate. Aren't you afraid of this bone sphere's aura?" Xiaohua was a little flabbergasted. Little White urged, "Outside the soul formation sky, I'm naturally afraid. But inside the soul formation sky, I have many soul strands that can resist this aura. Don't say any more, Xiaohua, quickly take it." "Okay." Xiaohua nodded and released his soul strands. They wrapped around the bone sphere and pulled it towards his forehead. The bone sphere was naturally as heavy as 10,000 caddies, but Xiaohua also had many soul strands. Under the urging of his soul power, it actually moved little by little. The closer it got to Xiaohua's forehead, the smaller the bone sphere became. In the end, Xiaohua waited until the bone ball had shrunk to the size of a thumb before he released his soul bridge. One end of the bridge landed on top of the bone ball, while the other end landed on top of the mysterious cloud. Seeing that the cloud was about to open up a passage, Xiaohua gritted his teeth and used the last of his soul force to drag his soul bridge and the bone ball into the passage. Xiaohua let out a long breath and almost collapsed on the ground of the bone palace. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua endured the unspeakable headache and entered the soul formation sky. At this time, he saw that the bone sphere had already turned into a divine statue of the heavenly Wu great god. It stood proudly at the top of the soul formation sky. Countless green rays of light were emitted from the divine statue like sunlight. Although Xiaobai was afraid of the divine statue, it still dragged the soul cultivator Xiaohua, who only had a green core left. It did its best to resist the green light of the heavenly Wu great god. Unexpectedly, the soul cultivator Xiaohua's body condensed faster in the green light. In particular, the green light of the heavenly Wu great god seemed to contain something else. When it landed on the soul cultivator Xiaohua's body, a strange feeling arose from the bottom of Xiaohua's heart. Although he didn't know what this feeling was, it was clear that the bone sphere of the heavenly Wu great god was harmless to him. Xiaohua escaped from the mysterious dark cloud and rested for several days. Then he went to the nearest bone pillar. It took Xiaohua more than 2 months to collect all the bone spheres in the 12 bone palaces into the mysterious dark cloud. Inside the soul formation sky, the 12 bone spheres transformed into 12 gods. They were like 12 stars that surrounded Xiaohua and Xiaobai. Layers of green light covered the two of them. Xiaohua trembled violently, and Xiaobai's dragon body also swelled. Xiaobai even urged the soul strands to turn into clouds in front of him to protect him. From the soul cultivator Xiaohua's body, Xiaohua's understanding entered Xiaohua's body. It seemed to be some kind of soul technique, but also some kind of curse. In short, it was somewhat strange. Xiaohua closed his eyes for a long time, but he couldn't understand it. He simply ignored it. Looking at Xiaobai's painful and happy appearance, he withdrew from the mysterious dark cloud. Then Xiaohua urged the flying technique to rush to the last bone pillar. This last bone pillar was several times taller than the other 12 bone pillars. But strangely, there was no white bone palace on top of this bone pillar. Instead, there was a rhombus-shaped crystal floating in the air. The crystal was the size of a fist, and there was another thing embedded in it. When Xiaohua saw the thing inside the crystal, he couldn't help but exclaim, How is this possible?" After saying that, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out the crystal skull thumb ring that was given to him by the Witch King of Meng Mountains. Xiaohua held the thumb ring in his hand and looked inside the crystal again. There was another crystal skull thumb ring in front of him. The two crystal skull thumb rings were exactly the same. Buzz Xiaohua took out the thumb ring. The thumb ring immediately emitted a dark green brilliance. The thumb ring inside the crystal also emitted a brilliance, but the crystal still didn't move. Xiaohua placed the thumb ring on the crystal, but the crystal still didn't move. Xiaohua then released his soul strands, but the crystal still didn't move. Moreover, he couldn't drag it. Even when Xiaohua urged the hammer of divine will and waved the wishful staff, he still couldn't cause any damage to the crystal. In the end, Xiaohua was like a defeated rooster. He stared at the thumb ring inside the crystal dejectedly, his eyes full of frustration. "Damn it, this Xiao is going to waste time with you. I don't believe that there is something in this world that this Xiao can't get." Then, Xiaohua sat cross-legged in front of the crystal, closed his eyes and meditated. Every time he thought of a method, he would immediately use it on the crystal. For more than a month, Xiaohua failed again and again. He didn't know how many methods he had used. Ouch! In the end, the green-robed Xiaohua couldn't stand it anymore and complained secretly. "Damn it, fellow Taoist. Why don't you try your blood? This blood refining method can be used by all races. Isn't it just the power of blood in the bloodline?" Chapter 3983. You only know how to waste I's blood essence. Xiaohua snorted angrily, but he felt a little embarrassed in his heart. In the early years, Xiaohua didn't know how precious his blood essence was, so he used a lot of it. But after he obtained the blood drop paradise, Xiaohua rarely used his blood essence. Last time, in the blood pool of gods and devils, Xiaohua used 9 drops of his blood essence all at once, causing him to be unable to recover. Therefore, Xiaohua never thought of using his blood essence. But since it had come to this point, blood essence might be a method. Xiaohua had no choice but to give it a try. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, when the essence blood landed on the crystal, The essence blood flowed for a moment, then seeped into the crystal. The crystal was silent for a few breaths of time. Then countless strange green seal characters flashed within the crystal. Within these green seal characters, the crystal began to melt, and the crystal skull's thumb ring emerged from the crystal. Looking at Xiaohua's essence blood, there was a trace of Xiaohua's essence blood that had landed on the crystal skull. However, the crystal skull seemed to be untainted, and it did not allow the essence blood to seep into it. The trace of blood slid on the crystal skull and fell back into the crystal. Xiaohua raised his hand, and the crystal skull thumb ring fell into his hand. With one in each hand, Xiaohua looked left and right. These two thumb rings were exactly the same, and he couldn't see any difference. Looks like Xiaohua thought to himself, if I want to know the origin of this thumb ring, or its use, I can only find out when I meet the Shaman King of Meng Mountains in the future. And all of a sudden, Xiaohua quivered again. A crazy thought uncontrollably flashed through his mind. The Shaman King has the ability to connect to the gods. Since he gifted this crystal skull to me, he must know that I can meet with him. Now that I'm in the hidden immortal continent, if I meet him, doesn't that mean I have to return to the Dawn Rain continent? Since he knows that I can meet him, does that mean I have to return to the Dawn Rain continent? When he thought of returning to the Dawn Rain continent, Xiaohua's heart was burning with passion. The longing for Fairy Hongxia, the longing for Imperial Thunder Sect, and the longing for Jiuxia and the others, involuntarily surged up like a tide. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua's mood calmed down. He mocked himself inwardly. Damn it, even if I can return, who knows when I can return? Who knows how to return? Forget it, don't think so much, cultivate diligently, I'll think about it when I have the chance. After Xiaohua put the two crystal skull rings into the space, his gaze fell on the crystal. At this time, the crystal had already returned to its original state, but it was now empty. Xiaohua's drop of essence blood floated on the surface of the crystal. It seems like the crystal didn't absorb the essence blood, but instead used the essence blood to see if Xiaohua was qualified to take out the crystal skull rings. Then to check, he to go to the other to search to find to use. Some of the places is to there to find some place to find to find to find to be to find and to find could find some to find to the left to test to find found. Seeing this, Xiaohua knew that although the Soul Cultivator's ruins were vast, the most important thing was the 13 bone pillars. There was nothing useful in other places. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't plan to look any further. Activating his flight technique, Xiaohua flew towards the mountain peak closest to the central bone pillar. Back when he was comprehending the going south, going north, going south, going south, going north, going south, going south, going north, going south, going south, going south, going south, going south, Xiaohua had already figured out that there was a green seal character engraved on the stone wall of the palace. Furthermore, there was an extremely large amount of green light radiating from the palace. When he thought about the numerous whirlpools and tiny teleportation tunnels in the Forbidden Spring Ocean, Xiaohua knew that if he wanted to leave this place, he would have to rely on the green light radiating from the palace. As for which green light he would use to leave this place, Xiaohua wasn't sure. Speaking of luck, Xiaohua believed that with the dragon vein and dragon qi in his body, if he said that his luck was second in the hidden immortal continent, no one would dare to say that they were first. Flying to the top of the mountain, Xiaohua looked around. The soul strand between his eyebrows moved like a big hand to grab one of the green lights. Suddenly, another cluster of green light emerged from the palace and covered Xiaohua's body in a flash. As soon as the soul strand came in contact with the green light, it immediately fluctuated violently. Green seal characters that looked like ants surged out of the green light and tumbled to form a simple transmission channel. Amidst the gray-white spatial folds, Xiaohua's body disappeared from the Soul Cultivator's ruins. It was impossible to say how many years had passed since any human or demon had appeared in the ruins of the Soul Cultivator. Suddenly, a huge rumbling sound rang out from the depths of the abyss where Xiaohua had been first smashed by the green seal text. Immediately afterward, a shattered ship, as well as countless pieces of flesh and bones, emerged from the depths of the sea and fell straight into the abyss. The entire mountain peak trembled slightly, but after a moment, it went completely silent. When Xiaohua fell into the transmission channel, he immediately felt that something was wrong, because the transmission channel was not complete, and was filled with the tearing force of space. Xiaohua activated the Dharma embodiment technique, and took out the Grand Qianquan teleportation token at the same time. Taoist magic treasures were indeed wonderful. As soon as the Grand Qianquan teleportation token was taken out, the space in the transmission channel immediately stabilized. At least, the tearing force of space a few feet around Xiaohua had weakened. In just half a cup of tea's time, light appeared in front of Xiaohua's eyes. Then a strong pressure appeared around his body. Xiaohua's transcendence golden body flashed extremely brightly. Finally, with a sharp whistle, Xiaohua's figure flew out of the transmission channel like a meteor. Roar! Xiaohua's figure appeared from the teleportation channel. He immediately let out a long laugh and used the wind escape technique to leave the channel. After Xiaohua flew out 1,000 feet, he looked to his left and saw that he was at the periphery of the Forbidden Spring Sea. There were green lightning bolts and whirlpools of different sizes on the sea surface and in space. With a smile on his face, Xiaohua released his soul consciousness to explore. Then he took out the sea map of the North Sea Dragon Palace. After a while, Xiaohua clapped his hands and laughed. Good. This Xiao's luck is really unparalleled in the world. Although this is not the place where this Xiao entered the Soul Cultivator ruins, it is still at the edge of the sea map. This Xiao only needs to follow the map and fly out of the Forbidden Spring Sea. However, even though Xiaohua had a sea map, and even though this place was already the periphery of the Forbidden Spring Sea, with Xiaohua's sense of direction, it was still somewhat difficult for him to leave the Forbidden Spring Sea. After waiting for a day and a night, Xiaohua, who was in a rather sorry state, barely managed to squeeze out of the two whirlpools. Looking at the boundless blue water in front of him, and the faint thunderbolts and whirlpools behind him, Xiaohua activated the water escape technique, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Xiaohua was afraid that even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't tell others about his experience in the Forbidden Spring Sea. He really couldn't afford to lose face. Half an hour later, Xiaohua saw a small island on the surface of the sea. After thinking for a while, he waved his hand and took out Ao Shi's corpse. After scanning it with his divine sense, he doubtfully waved his hand and peeled off a dragon's scale from Ao Shi's tail. Xiaohua looked around and said with a bitter smile, "Everyone says that the human race is cunning, but look at the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace. This dragon shell was actually inserted into Ao Shi's body. If this Xiao didn't use the soul summoning technique to explore Ao Shi's soul, how could I find this dragon shell so easily? Maybe I was really deceived by him, and thought that the dragon shell was lost in the Scarlet Storm." There was naturally Jianghong in Long Bay. However, Jianghong was not in human form at this time. Instead, she was a small dragon about 10 feet long. The small dragon was snow white and looked very crystal clear. On the pure white dragon body, there was a purple-red chain binding Jianghong. Jianghong's eyes were closed, and her dragon body was stiff. She didn't move at all, no different from being dead. Xiaohua didn't dare to act rashly. He searched the dragon shell again, but didn't find anything special. After thinking for a while, he first put Ao Shi into the space, and then pulled Lu Yi out of the space. Lu Yi didn't have time to greet Xiaohua before he saw Jianghong. A strange expression appeared on his face, and he hesitantly bowed and asked, "Disciple greets master, is this little Yin?" Xiaohua saw Lu Yi's strange expression and couldn't help but think of the snake spirit, and the old scholar in the Feather Spirit Bay. He said with a smile, "Yes, this is little Yin. She is the little princess of the heavenly abode river, Jianghong." Alas, Lu Yi sighed, and his gaze fell on Jianghong's dragon body again. He said, "Although Disciple has always been fantasizing about meeting little Yin, I still didn't expect that we would meet in such a way. This is little Yin's original body, right?" "Indeed. Since little Yin is a dragon of the heavenly abode river, this is naturally her original body." Xiaohua nodded. "However, master can't be sure if this is little Yin for the time being." "Yes. Lu Yi's answer surprised Xiaohua. Disciple can feel that this should be little Yin. You can feel it? Xiaohua asked in surprise. Yes, I can't explain it. Lu Yi looked up and down at the strange race's body that was much bigger than him. After waiting for a moment, Xiaohua whispered. What did you see? I didn't expect Yin, Er's original body to be so beautiful. Lu Yi stared at the dragon body and praised. Ah. Xiaohua blinked his eyes and shook his head vigorously. He didn't expect Lu Yi to say such words. Isn't it? Master. Lu Yi raised his head strangely. When Disciple saw the dragon body, he was only surprised and shocked. But thinking that this is Yin, Disciple felt that she was very beautiful. I didn't expect the demon race to be so beautiful. Chapter 3984. Xiaohua was completely defeated. He firmly believed that even if Lu Yi was lying on top of this dragon body, Lu Yi would not be scared to death by Jiang Hong. It's like this Disciple. Xiaohua recounted everything Aosher had told him, as well as everything he'd done. In the end he said, although I've already rescued Jiang Hong, she's been imprisoned by the North Sea Dragon Palace. Perhaps the chains binding her are easy to break, but I don't dare to rashly attempt to break through the North Sea Dragon Palace's demonic arts. You still have to wait for me to send her back to Yuling Bay, and see what to do with the Heavenly Abode River. Actually, the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace was attacked, and I was lucky to escape. As for the dragons of the Heavenly Abode River, I really don't know what their fate is. Then, Master, Lu Yi said with a smile. Do you think I am the key to awakening Xiaoyin? Can this disciple kiss little Yin awake? Pa. Xiaohua reached out and hit Lu Yi's head. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you think Xiaoyin ate an apple? I don't think it's Xiaoyin who has a problem, it's you. You've heard too many stories and you've gone mad. Hee, Lu Yi touched his head and said, Master, I was just joking with you. Since the most difficult thing has been done, you don't have to be too anxious to wake Xiaoyin up. Let's wait until there is an opportunity in the future. Now, I understand that little Yin is a member of the dragon tribe, and the little princess of the Heavenly Abode River. I'm afraid that her responsibilities far exceed my expectations. To be able to meet her, I'm already satisfied. Let's talk about the future in the future. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said with a smile. How can you just meet her? Let's put Xiaoyun in the Kunlun Wonderland. You take good care of her. If possible, you can ask Fu Jiwen. He has some experience in this area. Oh. What experience does senior brother Fu have? Lu Yi didn't understand. Naturally, Xiaohua wouldn't directly tell Lu Yi about the knockout powder. He just chuckled and took Lu Yi and Jiang Hong into the space. At this moment, Jiang Hong was no different from a naked human woman. As for what to do, that was Lu Yi's problem. As for whether or not these things had anything to do with eating apples, Xiaohua didn't have to worry about it. Then, Xiaohua looked at the long bay in his hand. There were indeed some things from the North Sea Dragon Palace inside, but how could he dare to go to the North Sea Dragon Palace? This time he had offended the North Sea Dragon Palace. It was already good enough that Ao Jing didn't ask the North Sea Dragon Palace's Dragon King to kill him. Thinking about this, Xiaohua looked at the sun, thought about the direction, then turned into a gust of wind and flew in the direction he thought was right. However, after flying for an hour, Xiaohua suddenly felt a faint green thunderbolt appear in the distant horizon. Moreover, layers of spatial aura uncontrollably overflowed. Xiaohua was startled and hurriedly raised his head to look at the sky. Previously, the scorching sun was overhead, but now, it was covered in dense clouds. How could he still recognize the direction? Motherfucker, Xiaohua cursed angrily. Needless to say, he must have flown until he lost his way, and returned to the vicinity of the forbidden spring ocean. How can this be? Why don't I ask Fujiwen to come out? Just as Xiaohua was thinking, rumble, a loud sound of water came from dozens of miles away, and a water column shot straight into the sky. Then, a muffled dragon roar sounded from the water column, and a blood-red dragon nearly 100 feet long rose up from the water column. After accumulating power, it bared its fangs and brandished its claws, then pounced into the water. Ha! Isn't this the bloodline dharma body of the true dragon bloodline? This Ao Zhantian? Xiaohua was shocked. He hurriedly released his divine sense and urged his body to fly toward the water column. Before his divine sense could sweep across the water column, a sharp howl sounded, and a figure flew out from the water. This figure was wearing a suit of armor, but the armor had already been shattered, and the flesh on the body was covered in blood. Blood was still flowing from the lacerations. Looking at the bloodline Dharma body that had just charged into the water, Xiaohua saw two pitch-black tentacles reaching out from the blood dragon's body. Wisps of demonic clouds flowed from the tentacles, causing the blood dragon to become extremely dim. Looking at the human figure that had just appeared, Xiaohua also saw a huge gash on his face, and half of his face was covered in blood. However, Xiaohua could see clearly that this was Ao Zhantian. The situation was truly dire. And before Xiaohua had a chance to say anything, another enraged roar erupted from the bottom of the ocean. A tentacle that was several dozen feet in size hurtled directly toward Ao Zhantian's chest like a heavenly staff. There were small claws protruding from the tip of the tentacle that were flashing with crimson light. If this tentacle hit Ao Zhantian, it would probably dig out his heart in an instant. Ao Zhantian's figure retreated rapidly, and a 3-feet-long nascent soul silently appeared above his head. The nascent soul held a dragon halberd in its hand, and with a wave of the halberd, it sliced off several feet of the tentacle. However, where the tentacle fell, a wave of pitch-black ink covered the sky and fell toward Ao Zhantian's body and nascent soul. Ao Zhantian's blood-red nascent soul seemed to be afraid of the ink, and it hurriedly hid in his body. Behind Ao Zhantian's retreating figure, another pitch-black tentacle silently appeared. This tentacle was hidden in the splashing waves, and it was very well hidden. "Brother Ao, be careful." Seeing that Ao Zhantian was fleeing in a hurry, and didn't even notice the tentacle behind him, Xiaohua was shocked. He instantly teleported to Ao Zhantian's side. Xiaohua? Happiness came too suddenly, and Ao Zhantian almost didn't dare to believe it. While Ao Zhantian was shocked, the tentacle had already activated the wave of water, and it slammed into Ao Zhantian's back. Xiaohua didn't have time to reply to Ao Zhantian. He waved his hand, and a bolt of lightning like a flying sword streaked across the sky, quickly striking the tentacle. A section of the tentacle that was over 100 feet long was chopped off by the lightning. The ink in the tentacle splashed out, and without any suspense, it landed on Ao Zhantian's back. At this moment, Ao Zhantian finally came to his senses. He roared angrily, and light flashed around his body, and he suddenly flew forward. Although it couldn't compare to Xiaohua's teleportation, it was still abnormally fast when he used all his strength. Although Ao Zhantian was fast, the ink wasn't slow either. In fact, Xiaohua even felt that this ink was a method that the sea beast used to attack its enemies. A chaotic sound rang out, and a few drops of ink had already landed on Ao Zhantian's back. When Xiaohua heard the sound, he looked at Ao Zhantian's back again. The ink quickly seeped into the exposed skin outside of the battle armor, and a patch of blackness mixed with blood and pus spread out. Ao Zhantian's face contorted from the pain. He waved his hand, and a large patch of flesh fell to the ground, and clean blood seeped out again. When he looked at Ao Zhantian's face again, it was as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Woo-woo, a sound like a tsunami came from the bottom of the sea, and 1,000 feet long water pillar shot toward Xiaohua. There was also another tentacle in the water pillar. Moreover, as the water pillar shot out, the surface of the sea bubbled, and a sea beast that was over 1,000 feet long rushed out. How could Xiaohua be afraid of this sea beast? With a wave of his hand, the seal of overturning the sea flew out, and under the stimulation of his transcendence energy, it turned into a seal that was over 1,000 feet long. Layers of illusory images smashed down like huge mountains. The first layer of illusory images sent the water pillar flying, and even the tentacle rapidly retreated. Then the second and third layers of illusory images landed on the sea beast's body. The sea beast was similar to a squid, and there were dozens of tentacles on its body. Every time the tentacles moved, the sound of waves would be heard. Moreover, there were also sharp barbs on the tentacles, and they looked very sharp. The sea beast had 4 eyes, one on each side of its head. There was also a strange sarcoma on the top of its head, and this sarcoma was faintly shining. Seeing that the seal of overturning the sea was so powerful, the sea beast's tentacles moved in succession. Wu not only did the seawater condense into blocks and rush into the air, but even the water attribute Yuan Qi of heaven and earth rushed into the blocks of water, wanting to resist Xiaohua's seal of overturning the sea. What was special was that the sea beast had too many tentacles, and at the same time, 7 or 8 of them shot out from under Xiaohua's body like giant pythons. Taoist Master Xiao, be careful. Ao Zhantian stood in the air, and he had already taken a pill. The new wound on his back was starting to heal. He knew that Xiaohua's cultivation was very high, but he couldn't help but remind him. This thing is called the water rhinoceros. Most of these tentacles are soft, and there is poison hidden inside. There are also a few tentacles that are extremely tough, and these tentacles can't even be damaged by ordinary magic treasures. Most importantly, before Ao Zhantian could finish, the 7 or 8 tentacles had already landed in front of Xiaohua. The barbs on the tentacles shone with a pitch-black light, and they whistled through the air. Wu Xiaohua's body didn't move at all. With a wave of his sleeve, the soaring dragon shears turned into a golden light and flew out. It was like a butcher's knife, and all the tentacles were cut in half. Of course, it was just as Ao Zhantian said. When one of the tentacles came into contact with the soaring dragon shears, it actually let out a clang sound. However, this tentacle still wasn't a match for the soaring dragon shears. Wu at this moment, the seal of overturning the sea once again displayed its might. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 100 li of the seal of overturning the sea beast rushed over, and with boundless power, it fiercely smashed towards the water rhinoceros. Roar! A loud sound that made Xiaohua feel a little dizzy came from the water rhinoceros's body. Then, to Xiaohua's surprise, the sarcoma on the water rhinoceros's head flashed with a water-blue brilliance, and rings of light suddenly formed, and rushed towards the seal of overturning the sea. Boom! A loud sound rang out, and the seal of overturning the sea was slightly flipped over from the impact. The coiling dragon's body was slightly distorted, and the water rhinoceros was smashed to the bottom of the sea. Even the water around the water rhinoceros was smashed by the seal of overturning the sea. Seeing that Xiaohua's magic treasure was actually so powerful, Ao Zhantian was flabbergasted, and he swallowed back the words he wanted to say. Chapter 3985. Although the sea beast named Aquarhino had yet to transform, its intelligence was not inferior to those demonic beasts that had transformed. Seeing that it had met a tough opponent and was smashed to the bottom of the sea, the sarcoma on its head once again produced a water-blue halo. This time, it was different from the previous time. The halo spread out in circles and with a strange fluctuation. The Aquarhino was actually going to use the water escape technique in the sea. Taoist Master Xiao Ao Zhantian shouted, "Quick! Don't let it escape. This sea beast is the prey that I've chosen this time." Oh! Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. He rubbed his hands and several rays of light fell into the sea, instantly sealing the area within a few miles. The water rhinoceros frantically waved its tentacles, and the tumor on its head moved again and again. Several light circles appeared one after another, but its several 100 feet long body couldn't even move half a foot. Ao Zhantian opened his mouth slightly, wanting to say something, but in the end he shook his head with a bitter smile. He flew over and bowed. Taoist Master Xiao, it's only been 10 years. Your cultivation has become even more unfathomable. I don't know what to say. Hee, it's just some rare fortuitous encounters. It's nothing. Xiaohua waved his hand modestly. Ao Zhantian replied sourly. Just some fortuitous encounters? Taoist Master Xiao worshipped true monarch Qing Yuan, and defeated 100,000 immortal soldiers. How can this be explained by some fortuitous encounters? Let's not talk about this. Xiaohua smiled as he looked at the water rhinoceros in the sea and said, "It's better to be early than early. I've been feeling guilty for missing my appointment with Taoist Ao. Who would have thought that we would meet here today?" Taoist Master Xiao not only saved me again, but also helped me complete the selection. I have to say, Taoist Master Xiao is my lucky star. Ao Zhantian sighed with emotion before Xiaohua could finish. Xiaohua smiled and asked again, "Your selection mission is to kill the water rhinoceros? No wonder you're clearly no match for the water rhinoceros, but still want to tangle with it. There's no need to kill it. Ao Zhantian knew that Xiaohua was a kind person and said with a smile, I just need to take the Shiting treasure on its head. Oh, that's it. Xiaohua looked at the tumor on its head and shook his head. This Shiting treasure is the water rhinoceros's life. Taking it is no different from killing it. That is true, Ao Zhantian replied. However, after the rhinoceros treasure is plucked, it will be born again after 1,000 years. The water rhinoceros just needs to hide for 1,000 years. 1,000 years? Xiaohua looked at the aquamarine scar on the water rhinoceros's forehead. This Shitingbao was born from the water rhinoceros's body. Chopping off the top would not kill it. However, looking at the water rhinoceros's crazy appearance, he could not help but frown. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out a rejuvenation pill from the space. He threw it into the water rhinoceros's mouth and said in a low voice, Immortal friend, don't blame me. After all, your Shitingbao is useful. After I take it, I will give it to you. Perhaps it will be useful for your cultivation. Taoist Ao Zhantian smiled bitterly. In his eyes, Xiaohua's actions were even more pedantic than the Buddhist disciples. Although the water rhinoceros was born with divine abilities, it is already at the 4th grade of essence force like me. However, it does not have the intelligence of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. How can it understand a Taoist talking to it? Xiaohua smiled and handed the Shitingbao to Ao Zhantian. Whether it understands or not is its problem. Whether I say it or not is my problem. All right. Ao Zhantian carefully put the Shitingbao away. Ao at this moment under the water, there was a faint flash of lightning. The water rhinoceros actually stretched out its tentacles and let out a low roar. The tentacles' movements looked very gentle. Ao Zhantian was shocked again. He did not understand what kind of pill Xiaohua gave the water rhinoceros. Go. Xiaohua naturally did not understand the water rhinoceros's voice. With a wave of his sleeve, he removed the seal. The water rhinoceros bobbed up and down on the surface of the water a few times before obediently sinking to the bottom of the sea. Damn it, Ao Zhantian did not know whether to laugh or cry. This is the first time I have seen such a well-behaved water rhinoceros. If Taoist had come a few hours earlier, the other immortals would not have died at its hands. Oh, you and the others are all participating in the selection? Xiaohua asked curiously. Then, what about the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace? Are they nearby? Ao Zhantian nodded. That's right. We are all participating in the selection. The one who can get the Shitingbao wins, and the others lose. As for the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace, they have already returned after leading us here. Ao Zhantian then explained the selection. Ao Zhantian waited for a long time, but Xiaohua did not come. Helpless, he could only follow the dragon boat to the North Sea Dragon Palace. After the humans and dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace had gathered, they would be sent to different selection locations by the dragons of the North Sea Dragon Palace. After the selection candidates were selected, these candidates would bring the selection certificate to the designated location on the Dragon Island. As for how many humans and monsters would pass, the North Sea Dragon Palace would not ask too much. After all, they only cared about the candidates of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Speaking of Ao Zhantian, there were 3 scholarly cultivators and 2 monsters with him. The 6 of them did not know what their mission was at first. Only after arriving here did they realize that they had to obtain the Shitingbao. All 6 of them knew how powerful the water rhinoceros was. The water rhinoceros could hide in the sea with the help of the Shitingbao, making it extremely difficult for humans and monsters to detect. The 6 of them searched for a long time, and finally found traces of the water rhinoceros. After killing one of the demons, the 5 of them tried their best to trap the water rhinoceros. However, just as they were about to kill it, they encountered another change. The spring-cleansing Forbidden Sea suddenly expanded several times and covered them, and the water rhinoceros in the Forbidden Sea. The water rhinoceros seemed to frequently enter and exit the Forbidden Spring Ocean. It took advantage of this rare opportunity to kill the last monster and scholarly cultivator before severely injuring Ao Zhantian. The other 2 scholarly cultivators could not avoid the whirlpool in time and were dragged away by the green light. Ao Zhantian did not know whether they were torn apart or teleported somewhere else. In the end, after the forbidden spring ocean shrank, Ao Zhantian tried to escape in order to save his life. However, the water rhinoceros gave chase. Ao Zhantian took pills as he fled. When he felt that he had recovered a little, he began to attack again. However, he was still no match for the water rhinoceros. If Xiaohua had not appeared, he would have been torn apart by the water rhinoceros. After hearing Ao Zhantian's words, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. The fighting in this world never stops. It's not just you and the water rhinoceros. It seems there are also secret fights between you. AI indeed. Ao Zhantian smiled bitterly. There is only one Shi Tingbao, 3 scholarly cultivators, and 2 monsters in their own alliance. If I had not gotten close to the 2 monsters and needed my help to kill the water rhinoceros, I would have been killed by them long ago. This selection is much more difficult than before. Now that fellow Taoist has obtained the pass to enter Dragon Island, I have fulfilled my promise. Xiaohua smiled. I just don't know. Can I still go to Dragon Island with fellow Taoist? Xiaohua had originally planned to go to Dragon Island with Ao Zhantian. Now that they had coincidentally bumped into each other, he naturally had to ask. Especially when he heard that the dragon generals of the North Sea Dragon Palace were not nearby. His enmity with the North Sea Dragon Palace would not be discovered by the dragon tribe. Of course you can. Ao Zhantian raised his brows. When I was reporting to Long Su, I had already reported your name to him, Io. Xiaohua hurriedly asked, fellow Taoist, you didn't report my name, did you? Of course not. Ao Zhantian did not know that Xiaohua had already offended the North Sea Dragon Palace. He thought that Xiaohua was worried about the Immortal Palace. He smiled and said, fellow Taoist, you are my follower. Of course, you are only a cultivator of the Tao sect. However, there is no need for you to worry. Once you reach Dragon Island, even the Immortal Palace will not be able to do anything to you. Xiaohua smiled and did not explain. He said, then can we go to Dragon Island now? Of course not. Ao Zhantian replied. I've obtained the right to enter Dragon Island, but I haven't decided where I'll be going to train on Dragon Island. Furthermore, we can only wait for the dragon tribe to arrive at the designated location on Dragon Island. How can we go directly to Dragon Island? All right, Xiaohua nodded. Then let's go. All right. Ao Zhantian was in an extremely good mood. This was the first time he had obtained the right to enter Dragon Island. It was not that he did not have the opportunity to enter before. However, there were very few cultivators of the Tao sect with the dragon tribe bloodline. He was always pushed aside by other Confucian cultivators or monsters. Today he could finally hold his head high. Then, Ao Zhantian raised his hand and took out a flying boat. He said respectfully, Taoist Master Xiao, please I am your follower. This flying boat should be controlled by me, right? Xiaohua stepped onto the flying boat and asked with a smile. Ao Zhantian waved his hand and said, everyone knows that I am a follower. There is no need to hide it. Just give them some face in front of the Dragon Island's dragon clan. As you wish. Xiaohua sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. He seemed to be meditating. Ao Zhantian wanted to ask something, but when he saw this he did not say anything. Xiaohua's consciousness entered the space. What greeted him was a mountain of white bones that was as large as a mountain. It was green-robed Xiaohua. He had taken out the Kunlun mirror and piled up all the treasures in it in a desolate place. Fellow Taoist green-robed. Seeing this, Jade Archive Xiaohua said helplessly, you can just take these treasures from the bottom of the sea. Why did you take so many bones? Chapter 3986. Green-robed Xiaohua waved his hand, and some damaged or rusted unknown magic weapons appeared in his hand. Even more bones were thrown to the side. When he looked at the collected treasures with a smile, he said, who knows if these bones are useful or not? Didn't you see that under the immortal beheading stage, the bones you casually picked up have already become a monster with 3 heads and 6 arms? Even you didn't dare to put the last triangular blood bone on it. Perhaps this poor Taoist can also piece together a monster from these bones. How is that possible? Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a wry smile. These bones were obviously lost in the Soul Cultivator ruins. How high can their cultivation be? Green-robed Xiaohua's neck stiffened, and he retorted. Even if these bones are useless, fellow Taoist Soul Cultivator has already obtained the Soul Cultivator inheritance. In the future, these bones will be useful in his hands. Oh, fellow Taoist, don't forget, don't you want to repair the Nether Passage mirror? Don't you still need these bones? Okay, Xiaohua nodded. In that case, I still have to thank you. You're welcome. This is what I should do. Green-robed Xiaohua's tail curled up. There are really many things in the Soul Cultivator ruins. In order to avoid the situation where you lost the Kunlun mirror fragment last time, I decided to search slowly. Jade Archive, Xiaohua said with displeasure. Fellow Taoist seems to have mentioned the Kunlun mirror fragment more than once, right? I mentioned it in the past, I mentioned it now, and I will mention it again in the future. It is necessary to guard against mistakes and not let you make the mistake of being empirically careless. Green-robed Xiaohua's words were one after another. What about the Thunderbolt technique? You don't seem to have finished comprehending it yet, right? Jade Archive, Xiaohua asked again. Fellow Taoist, don't pick up sesame seeds and throw away watermelons, making a fool of yourself. Does fellow Taoist think that the Thunderbolt technique can be comprehended in 100 or 1,000 years? Green-robed Xiaohua asked with a smile. If you don't take a few steps, you won't be able to reach 1,000 miles. Even if it takes 10,000 years to comprehend, it still has to be done little by little. Jade Archive Xiaohua knew what the green-robed Xiaohua was thinking and immediately replied. Green-robed Xiaohua made another move and took out a diamond-shaped box from the pile of bones. He looked around and said, I know that you are jealous of Ai's wisdom and farsightedness. Both times, I have done things extremely well and picked up a big bargain for you and me. Forget it. Looking at the narcissistic green-robed Xiaohua, the Jade Archive Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Do as you wish. Sort these things according to your wishes. If your disciples can use them, then use them. Leave the rest for the Fortune Gate's disciples on the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. I know. Seeing that Xiaohua no longer cared about the Jade Archive, the green-robed Xiaohua smiled. I have decided, Ai's sect will also be called the Fortune Gate. Picking up the wisdom of others, can't you make your own Leitang sect? Jade Archive Xiaohua curled his lips and replied. Green-robed Xiaohua scratched his head and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Confucian cultivator, and I thought of many names, but none of them fit Ai's meaning, haha. Jade Archive Xiaohua laughed. He knew that the two primordial spirits were arguing back and forth in the space. Each of them came up with hundreds of names, but none of them could convince the other. In the end, they could only use the Fortune Gate as the name. Is the sect formed now? Although Jade Archive Xiaohua knew about the changes in the Fortune Gate as soon as he entered the space, he still asked in a low voice. Green-robed Xiaohua seemed to like Jade Archive Xiaohua's respect and replied, Good to let fellow Taoists know. The Fortune Gate is already in its embryonic form. However, these children are still young, so let them cultivate first. When their aptitudes are determined, some disciples will be assigned to manage the sect's internal affairs. Right now, I can't see anything. And indeed, Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. He looked at the space and said, Normally, this space is different from the outside, so the time inside should also be different from the outside. However, because Ai's physical body is outside, the time inside the space is the same as the hidden immortal continent outside. If you and I are strong enough, we can control the time inside this space and speed up the disciples' cultivation. That's time, fellow Taoist. Green-robed Xiaohua curled his lips and said, Unless you have a great divine ability, you can't control it. Right now, you and I can't even comprehend the power of space, so how can we dare to covet time? If you have this free time, why don't you use it to comprehend the Crimson Infant technique and quickly match your meridians with your nascent soul realm? Otherwise, if you and I cultivate to the crossing tribulation stage in the future, it will be even more troublesome. I know this. I already have some ideas. It won't be long before I can truly advance to the spirit-severing stage after taking the dark-breaking pill. Jade Archive Xiaohua replied. Then he looked at Xiaogua, who was excitedly refining pills, and asked, How did Xiaogua's alchemy technique advance so quickly? Damn it, don't mention this little guy. Green-robed Xiaohua gnashed his teeth in hatred. You taught him some alchemy techniques. Every day, after taking care of the spiritual herbs, he would refine pills. You also know that he's not much slower than me in taking care of the spiritual herbs, so he has a lot of time to refine pills. This alchemy is like his beloved game. He plays it every day, all the time, all the time, all the time. Later, when you stopped coming, he felt bored and came to bother I every day. I was annoyed to death by him, so I simply taught him all my alchemy techniques. So that's how it is. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, this Xiaoguo is also very talented. It seems that my fortune gate won't lack pills in the future. Yes, you're right. Green-robed Xiaohua nodded. Currently, my fortune gate's pills are all produced by Xiaoguo. What about that dyer? Jade Archive Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. Green-robed Xiaohua's face showed a rare serious expression as he replied. This duckling is different from other spiritual insects. She should have an inheritance. After going through the separation of yin and yang in the space, her entire body has changed. She seems to be completely different from when she first entered the space. The aura on her body is increasingly similar to that of the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress. And there are even signs of it surpassing her. It seems that her presence here is also a troublesome matter. What? Is fellow Taoist going to ruthlessly destroy a flower? Green-robed Xiaohua asked with a smile. What about that 7-colored conch? That thing didn't change much. After all, it didn't go through the separation of yin and yang. Green-robed Xiaohua stopped smiling and replied, however, the aura inside it seems to be extremely powerful. If fellow Taoist wants to deal with it, it's better to deal with it as soon as possible like the duckling. I want to deal with it as soon as possible. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled bitterly. But how do I deal with it? Throw it in the 1,000 demons' sacred realm? That's true. Green-robed Xiaohua's heart was filled with sorrow. When this 7-colored conch entered the space, the deity statue flew out from the Empress's restriction. Presumably, this thing is related to the Empress. Moreover, this deity statue is also very mysterious. It's different from the 12 great deities. If you don't find out the truth, I'm afraid you won't be satisfied, right? Of course I won't be satisfied. Jade Archive Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. Shang Huaming's sect is very strange. Now that I think about it, there are a lot of strange things. Especially in the cultivation method, there are faint traces of the demon race. This deity statue should also be hiding a big secret. I'm afraid all of this will have to start from this 7-colored conch. Let's increase our cultivation first. Green-robed Xiaohua sighed. Right now what we lack is time. After returning from Dragon Island, it's best to go into seclusion. Moreover, it's a long period of seclusion. I also want to go into seclusion. Jade Archive Xiaohua sighed. That inexplicable warning sign is still nowhere to be seen. If we can encounter it on Dragon Island, that's naturally good. In the future, I will definitely go into seclusion with peace of mind. Let's not talk about this anymore. Talking about it makes me cry. Green-robed Xiaohua waved his hand again. A pearl fell into his hand. As he carefully rubbed it, the pearl gave off a cloud-like brilliance. Which of the other cultivators aren't in seclusion? When have I seen fellow cultivator in seclusion? And fellow cultivators have worked hard. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled. After I finish the matters on Dragon Island and remodel Little White's body, I will go into seclusion. I hope so. Green-robed Xiaohua carefully hid the pearl and faintly said, fellow cultivator always says you will go into seclusion, but when has your wish ever come true? Green-robed Xiaohua finished speaking. With a wave of his hand, another pile of bones was thrown to the side. He no longer paid any attention to Jade Archive Xiaohua. Jade Archive Xiaohua faintly smiled. His figure entered the dark side of space. He looked at the death aura of the underworld fruit tree, then looked at the underworld lotus and the others before entering the soul formation sky. The soul formation sky didn't change much from before. Little White had shrunk extremely small under the light of the 12 divine shadows, and Soul Cultivator Xiaohua had condensed a little under the green light. It seemed like Soul Cultivator Xiaohua wouldn't be able to fully recover without a long period of accumulation. Xiaohua's consciousness left the space. When he opened his eyes, he saw faint clouds hovering on both sides of the flying boat. The flying boat seemed to be cutting through the clouds. Fellow cultivator Ao. Xiaohua looked at Ao Zhantian, who was focused on driving the flying boat. He took out a pill and handed it over. This is a pill refined by me. Your injuries aren't light, so it's better for you to take it as soon as possible. Many thanks, spiritual master. Ao Zhantian didn't care about this pill. He originally wanted to put it away, but after hesitating for a moment, he still took the pill. Just as the pill entered his mouth, Ao Zhantian's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly sat down cross-legged and adjusted his breathing. He didn't even care about the flying boat. Xiaohua stood up and released his divine sense. He slowed down the speed of the flying boat and leisurely shuttled through the clouds as if he was sightseeing. After a full hour, Ao Zhantian finally opened his eyes. He looked at Xiaohua with great admiration and said, "Spiritual Master Xiao, I really didn't expect you to be able to refine such a good pill. The quality of the pill just now is the first I've seen in my life. And here are a few more." Xiaohua took out the pill. Couldn't he understand the meaning behind Ao Zhantian's words? With a wave of his hand, he took out a few more jade bottles and handed them to Ao Zhantian. He said, "This trip to the Dragon Island is very dangerous. If you have a few more pills, you'll be able to guarantee your safety. Many thanks, spiritual master." Ao Zhantian happily accepted the bottles and put them away. Chapter 3987. Fellow Taoist, please take control of the flying boat. At the side, Xiaohua Rang said with a smile. Taking advantage of this period of time, "Fellow Taoist, can you tell me the specifics of your experience on Dragon Island?" "Sure." Ao Zhantian took over the flying boat and explained. "After passing the selection, you'll be qualified to enter Dragon Island. However, there are many training grounds on Dragon Island, and the dangers are all different. Therefore, there's a test before entering Dragon Island. This test is very simple. It's to see how strong the descendants of the dragon bloodline are, and how pure their bloodline is. According to the results of the test, they'll be assigned to different training grounds. Of course, the more dangerous the training grounds are, the more benefits you'll get. However, I don't have any special plans. As long as I can enter Dragon Island, I'll get whatever benefits I want. As long as I leave Dragon Island, the Immortal Palace will be wary of Dragon Island's influence and won't force me too much. Since Taoist priest also left Dragon Island with me, the Immortal Palace will also consider this relationship." At this point, Ao Zhantian was suddenly shocked. He looked at Xiaohua and smiled bitterly. Actually, Taoist priest's current strength has already exceeded the limits of the Immortal Palace's tolerance. Furthermore, Taoist priest defeated perfected cultivator Qingyuan earlier. I'm afraid that in the future, even Dragon Island can't go against the Immortal Palace. Unless Taoist priest has an extremely pure dragon bloodline. That's impossible. Xiaohua pinches his chin and says with a smile. Previously, I wanted to lend you a hand, but now, I want to take a trip to Dragon Island. As for the Immortal Palace, I naturally have other ways. That's good. Ao Zhantian smiled. Taoist priest's cultivation is too high. What I promised you earlier at this point. Ao Zhantian was shocked again. He looked at Xiaohua in surprise and said in a low voice, "Taoist priest Xiaoyu, could it be that you want to go to Dragon Island? To avoid the Immortal Palace?" Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Ao Zhantian with a faint smile and asked, "What? If I do that, won't I implicate you?" "Not necessarily." Ao Zhantian bit down on his lower lip as he replied bitterly, "There are humans and demons who die on Dragon Island every time we train. As my bodyguard, it's normal for you to die on Dragon Island. If Taoist Master has the means to avoid the Dragon Island's dragon clan, that would naturally be good. However, I'm afraid that you'll overreach yourself and be killed by the dragon clan. Well, since fellow Taoist Ao mentioned this, then I won't hide it from fellow Taoist. I do have some matters to attend to on Dragon Island. But don't worry, fellow Taoist Ao, this matter absolutely won't cause any trouble for you." How could Ao Zhantian be at ease when he saw Xiaohua's confident expression? but now he couldn't turn back. After all, he was the one who invited Xiaohua. Moreover, Xiaohua had helped him obtain the qualifications for the selection. Xiaohua's strength far surpassed his. He simply didn't have the ability to stop Xiaohua. Seeing that Ao Zhantian was a little unwilling, Xiaohua wanted to tell him about his disguise technique and the dragon tribe's invisibility technique. However, these were all Xiaohua's own secrets, and he couldn't possibly tell Ao Zhantian. Sigh, isn't this similar to when this Xiao was forced to go to Ink Cloud Black Forest? Xiaohua sighed. This Xiao clearly knew that it would be disadvantageous for him, but he still had to go. Things have changed with the passage of time. It's just that the foundation establishment stage has been replaced by the nascent soul stage Ao Zhantian, and the golden core stage Xiejiqian has been replaced by the current Xiaohua. As the saying goes, I'm a fish on a chopping board. With these grudges, Ao Zhantian seemed to have something on his mind. He lowered his head and steered the flying boat without saying anything. Xiaohua originally wanted to ask more about Dragon Island, but seeing this, he could only give up. After flying for another dozen or so days, aside from a few sea beasts that were far more powerful than Ao Zhantian, there were also many violent storms. The storms in the depths of the North Sea were even more ferocious than the Crimson Explosion. However, the storms didn't have the corrosive power of the Crimson Explosion. With Xiaohua's assistance, Ao Zhantian's flying boat didn't encounter any particular danger. Even so, Ao Zhantian's flying boat was slightly damaged when an irregular reef appeared in the boundless sea. After flying above the reef, Ao Zhantian heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Xiaohua with a complicated expression and said, "This is truly beyond my expectations. Aside from the powerful sea beasts in the depths of the North Sea, the storms are also so ferocious. If it weren't for the Taoist master, I wouldn't have been able to survive the onslaught of the sea beasts. Even this storm would have been able to reduce me to ashes." Fellow Taoist Ao Xiaohua waved his hand with a smile. Although these sea beasts and storms are powerful, they aren't enough to take your life. The dangers of the North Sea shouldn't lie here, but rather in its boundlessness. This boundlessness far surpasses that of the hidden immortal continent, and the powerful beings in this sea also far surpass that of the hidden immortal continent. When we entered this foreign world, danger came one after another, and there was no end to it. Ai, that's right. Ao Zhantian sighed. In my early years, I was successful in my cultivation and felt that I could go anywhere. However, after leaving the Yong prefecture, I discovered that the hidden immortal continent actually had the 9 prefectures. The 9 prefectures were filled with powerful beings, and I really wasn't much. When I traveled the 9 prefectures, I heard about the strange stories of the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm and the pure land of ultimate bliss. I also discovered that the 3 continents were even bigger. I was really just a drop in the ocean. When I participated in the first selection of the Dragon Island, I discovered that the 4 seas were incomparably vast compared to the 3 continents. Just like when I entered the nascent soul realm from the Golden Core realm, there were even more unknowns before my eyes. After saying this, Ao Zhantian raised his head and looked at the distant horizon. After a long time he said, "However, after the selection, I came here again. After a short 10 days of experience, I realized that the road ahead would be even more difficult. If I want to see the beautiful scenery in the distance, I can only use this trip to the Dragon Island to raise my strength to a new height." Good. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist Ao, I'm afraid that this kind of spirit is the fearless spirit of our Taoist cultivators. Only a cultivator with this kind of spirit can stand out among the numerous Confucian cultivators. I'm sure that in the future, fellow Taoist Ao will be able to stand out among the hidden immortal cultivators." I'm ashamed. Ao Zhantian's face was burning as he said, "Only an enlightened master has the ability to stand out among the hidden immortal cultivators. If I rely on the power of the Dragon Island to escape from the control of the Confucian cultivators, it's already not bad. As long as you have the belief, it will come true sooner or later," Xiaohua said with a faint smile. "All right, I'll take your blessings. I hope that one day, I'll be able to surpass you." Ao Zhantian's mood was slightly relaxed as he said with a smile, "Enlightened master, please sit tight." "Oh, Do we still need to fly? Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. He thought that this reef was the place where he had agreed to meet with the dragon tribe. Ha ha ha! Ao Zhantian laughed and said, "This is only a transit point. We're still far from where the Dragon Island emissary wants us to go." "All right." Xiaohua sat down cross-legged and said, "I'll listen to fellow Taoist Ao's arrangements as a guard." Ao Zhantian rubbed his hands together and struck the flying boat with several spell seals. The entire boat flashed with a blue light. This light was different from before. It was thicker and smoother. Then, as Ao Zhantian made a series of hand seals, the flying boat soared into the sea and headed in another direction. The flying boat flew for another 10 days or so. During this time, the entire seabed was extremely peaceful. The storms and sea beasts that they had encountered before had all disappeared. The entire seabed was filled with leisurely swimming fish. The beautiful and exotic scenery made the two Taoist cultivators gasp in amazement, and the displeasure in Ao Zhantian's heart gradually faded. On this day, just when the flying boat passed by an undercurrent in the sea, and was about to adjust its direction, a valiant primordial thought swept over from afar with the help of the seawater. A cold voice asked using the dragon language, "Are you the human practitioners who passed the selection and came to the Dragon Island to gain experience?" Ao Zhantian was shocked and didn't dare to control the flying boat. He stood on the boat and bowed respectfully. "I am Ao Zhantian, from the North Sea Dragon Palace selection area. I have already obtained the Shitingbao. Please inspect it." As he spoke, Ao Zhantian took out the Shitingbao and held it in his hand. Xiaohua stood to the side and bowed slightly. He didn't say anything as he listened to Ao Zhantian's somewhat clumsy and error-filled draconic language. And the Dragon Island envoy didn't understand Ao Zhantian's draconic language, but he looked at the Shitingbao in his hand and replied, "You're finally here. You're the last one. You actually made me wait for half a month." As he spoke, the flying boat flew into the distance without needing to be controlled. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a dragon tool that looked like a water droplet appeared in front of Xiaohua and Ao Zhantian. This dragon tool was tens of thousands of feet long, and was azure in color, similar to the color of the sea. An armored dragon stood on top of the dragon tool. Before Xiaohua and Ao Zhantian could get close to the dragon tool, a powerful draconic aura came from the dragon tool and the dragon tool, forcing the two of them to use their auras to resist. Ao Zhantian knew that the Dragon Island envoy was getting impatient from waiting. He smiled apologetically and said, "I'll let you know, Lord Envoy. I encountered Qi Bao when I was killing the water rhino, and was trapped in the Forbidden Spring Sea. That's why I came here. Please forgive me, Lord Envoy." "Oh, you encountered Qi Bao from a few days ago? Hee hee, how unlucky." The Dragon Island envoy's cold dragon face became slightly livelier after hearing this. He raised his hand and put away the Shitingbao that Ao Zhantian handed over. He then looked at Xiaohua and said, "Is this the guard you mentioned in the dragon stratagem?" This Ao Zhantian hesitated for a moment before nodding. "That's right. According to the rules of the Dragon Island, I can bring guards to participate in the training. He is the guard I reported to at the Dragon Island. And your guard strength is not bad." The Dragon Island envoy didn't even ask for Xiaohua's name. He waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and enter the Dragon Island. In a few days, most of the sea will sweep through this region. If we're late, I'm afraid it will be dangerous." Chapter 3988. "Yes, my lord," Ao Zhantian replied respectfully. He put away the flying boat and nodded at Xiaohua before following the dragon envoy into the travel dragon. Xiaohua was very careful. He didn't release any of his divine sense or elemental will. He only used the water escape technique to follow behind Ao Zhantian. After entering the travel dragon, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. The interior of the travel dragon was dozens of times larger than it looked from the outside. Apart from some ponds, flowers, rocks, and hills, there were even some pavilions hidden among the hills. It didn't look like a flying boat at all. In fact, not to mention Xiaohua, even Ao Zhantian was slightly stunned. The dragon envoy landed in midair and asked indifferently, "Ao Zhantian, do you want to live in the pavilion or among the hills?" Ao Zhantian came to his senses and smiled. "I am a human. I will live in the pavilion. And this is the jade token for the pavilion. It was refined with a human Dao spell. Take a look for yourself. The dragon envoy waved his hand, and a verdant jade badge landed in front of Ao Zhantian. There are no other rules in the traveling dragon aside from the prohibition of all fights. If anyone dares to start a fight, I will kill them all. Yes. Ao Zhantian's heart trembled as he received the jade token. The dragon envoy disappeared in a flash. Ao Zhantian released his divine sense and looked at the jade token. He smiled. Daoist Xiao, please follow me. Daoist Ao, please. Xiaohua smiled. I am your guard now. You don't have to be so polite. And this Ao understands. Ao Zhantian nodded. His figure flew forward, and Xiaohua followed behind. After flying for a short while, he felt an elemental will sweep over from the pond below him. It just so happened that a large monster that looked like a lizard was lying lazily in the mud beside the pond. Its fist-sized eyes flashed with a ferocious expression. Less than 100 feet away from the pond, a golden python was coiled around an ancient tree. On the python's forehead, there was a single horn that was very eye-catching. This demonic beast's vital intent was extremely powerful, and Ao Zhantian knew that he wasn't a match for it. Thus, he didn't even release his divine sense as he continued to fly past the lake and the ancient trees. By the time Xiaohua and Ao Zhantian arrived at a pavilion near a hill, the two of them had already encountered dozens of powerful demonic beasts. There was even a giant bat hanging upside down from a tree branch. Xiaohua couldn't help but think back to everything he had seen in the Spring Lightning Palace. He wanted to ask a few questions, but when he thought about Ao Zhantian, who also had a dragon bloodline, who knew how his bloodline had been passed down, he didn't dare to say anything more. Ao Zhantian activated his jade badge and unlocked the restrictions on the pavilion. The two of them went in to take a look. The layout of the pavilion was similar to that of an ordinary human's residence. However, there were very few furnishings inside, and it was somewhat similar to a quiet room. Xiaohua took a look and said, "Fellow Daoist Ao, since the Dragon Island's emissary has arranged a pavilion for us, I'm afraid it will take some time to get to the Dragon Island. What plans do you have during this period of time?" Ao Zhantian already had a plan in mind. He smiled and said, "Since it's an experiential training, there will be risks. Before the experiential training, increasing our strength is the most important thing. However, I'm sure there are more than just the two of us in the Travel Dragon Island. If we can make friends with a few of them, not only can we help each other during the experiential training, we can also look after each other when we return to the hidden immortal continent. I'm thinking." At this point, Ao Zhantian suddenly remembered that he had promised to serve Xiaohua for 1,000 years. He didn't know if Xiaohua would be unhappy if he made friends with Confucian cultivators in the Travel Dragon Island. Xiaohua didn't think too much about it. He nodded and said, "Fellow Daoist Ao is right. During the experiential training, I might not be by your side. It would be best if there were a few human cultivators in the Travel Dragon Island. You can do as you wish. I'm going to cultivate by myself." Ao Zhantian was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, "If that's the case, then you can go to the quiet room to cultivate. I'll cultivate outside and make friends with other cultivators." "All right." Xiaohua nodded and walked into the quiet room. As he walked, he said, "If you have any problems with your cultivation, you can come and find me." "I understand." Ao Zhantian smiled and sat down cross-legged. He closed his eyes and seemed to be thinking about something. Xiaohua entered the quiet room and found a random place. He also sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to cultivate. Boom! Not long after, the entire quiet room trembled slightly. Then, a loud sound of water came from outside the quiet room. Xiaohua understood that the Travel Dragon Island was finally activated. His trip to the Dragon Island had finally come to fruition. Sigh, it's so difficult. Xiaohua thought about how many things had happened since he found out that there was a possibility of Little White's body forming on the Dragon Island. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He wanted to tell Little White, but he was afraid that there would be more problems. After all, the dragon cleansing pond on the Dragon Island wasn't an ordinary pond. Anyone could go there. Who knew where the dragon cleansing pond was? Who knew what kind of dangers lay within? Forget it, it won't be too late to tell Little White after we reach the dragon cleansing pond. Xiaohua calculated, and began his rare meditation. This meditation lasted for more than half a year. At first, Xiaohua only cultivated the Taoist techniques. However, the more he cultivated, the more profound he felt it was. The nascent soul in his lower dantian felt like it was flying. Xiaohua knew that it was time for him to enter the spirit-severing stage. He didn't dare to advance in the Travel Dragon Island. Therefore, he temporarily put aside the Taoist techniques and began to cultivate the scarlet nascent soul. What puzzled Xiaohua was that under the scarlet nascent soul, his nascent soul began to feel heavy. The profound feeling of flying gradually disappeared. Strange. Xiaohua scratched his head. If this is the case, then this Xiao will cultivate both the Taoist techniques and the scarlet nascent soul. If the scarlet nascent soul is stronger than the Taoist techniques, then this Xiao will never be able to step into the spirit-severing stage? Of course, after pondering for a moment, Xiaohua laughed inwardly. How is that possible? When water is full, it will overflow. When the realm reaches a certain level, no matter how strong the scarlet nascent soul is, the realm will not advance. At that time, if I forcefully increase the scarlet nascent soul, it will create an imbalance between the meridians and nascent soul. This will create pressure on the physical body. The physical body may not be able to withstand the strength of the nascent soul. And in the end, the nascent soul will scatter. Therefore, when the realm reaches a certain level, it is still necessary to advance. However, this is a new technique that is stuck in the lower realm. If I want to hide it from the immortal palace in the future, I might as well give it a try. With this thought in mind, Xiaohua didn't dare to forcefully cultivate the scarlet nascent soul after reaching a certain level. He looked outside the meditation room. Ao Zhantian would occasionally cultivate and occasionally go out. Occasionally, there would be Confucian and Taoist cultivators coming to visit him. Xiaohua began to cultivate the lightning technique. After half a year, Xiaohua's lightning technique had reached a new height. On this day, 2 tall Confucian cultivators came to visit Ao Zhantian in the pavilion. Suddenly, a loud woo-woo sound came from outside the pavilion. Then, a voice that was as loud as a bell rang out within the travel dragon. How dare you! This voice was filled with anger. Following this voice, all of the restrictions within the travel dragon disappeared in a flash. Xiaohua's meditation room was no exception. Oh, fellow immortal Ao, you have other immortal friends in this pavilion? A Confucian cultivator wearing a bright yellow Confucian robe and an ancient Confucian headscarf frowned. He was originally shocked by the loud sound and wanted to stand up. However, when he saw Xiaohua's figure appear in the meditation room, he couldn't help but ask in a loud voice. Ao Zhantian smiled. Brother Chiron, this is a guard I brought with me. He's the same as your servant. However, he likes to cultivate. He went into seclusion as soon as he reached the dragon form, so I didn't introduce him. Then Ao Zhantian said to Xiaohua, Taoist Master Xiao, this is immortal friend Ao Chiron of the Qing province and his clan, immortal friend Ao Moran Ao. Come and greet them. This one is Xiaohua. Greetings, fellow immortals. Xiaohua fluttered over and cupped his hands in greeting. When the 2 immortal friends heard Xiaohua's name, they didn't have any strange expressions. It was as if they had never heard of Xiaohua's deeds. They glanced at Xiaohua and nodded slightly. Fellow immortal friend Zhao's cultivation is not bad. We also like you. Like fellow immortal Zhantian, you were able to benefit from the dragon god's blessing on the dragon island and improve your cultivation. Thank you for your auspicious words, fellow immortals. Xiaohua saw that the 2 of them didn't return the greeting and were even indifferent to his reputation. He already knew that the 2 of them were arrogant and didn't even put the immortal palace in their eyes. He smiled and asked Ao Zhantian, fellow Taoist Ao, what happened? Could it be that we've reached the Dragon Island? Who said we've reached the Dragon Island? Ao Chiron smirked and replied indifferently. How can we reach the Dragon Island in such a short period of time? If it was someone else, they might have retorted. However, Xiaohua only glanced at Ao Chiron and ignored him. Instead, he said to Ao Zhantian again, fellow Taoist Ao, from that voice, it should be the dragon envoy. There's a hint of anger in his voice. What's more, All the restrictions on the Dragon Island have been removed. If it wasn't for something strange happening, then the Dragon Envoy must have encountered. Before Xiaohua could finish, the Dragon Envoy called out in a calm voice. You all can come out. Are you telling us to come out? Ao Moran was a little surprised and looked at Ao Chiron. Ao Chiron was also puzzled. However, just as the two of them were hesitating, Xiaohua stepped out of the pavilion first. Ao Zhantian didn't want to offend the two of them. He raised his hand and said, Fellow immortals, please. Xiaohua walked out of the pavilion and saw that the space outside the pavilion was filled with multicolored clouds, and a huge dragon with dazzling brilliance was coiled within the clouds, and a fierce murderous aura was like a flying sword swimming in the entire space. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly stopped and looked around with narrowed eyes. He saw that in the surrounding pavilions, in the distant stone beach, ponds, and ancient trees, thousands of humans and demons had all revealed themselves. They were all like Xiaohua and looked around with confusion. No one dared to release their yuan intent. Chapter 3989. Good. The giant dragon roared good 3 times in midair, causing the entire dragon travel to tremble. The dozen or so pythons trembled under the dragon's might, almost pissing their pants. The 3 human cultivators standing beside Xiaohua were also pale. It was as if the dragon's might was more powerful than anything else. Listen up, all of you. I was ordered to bring you to the Dragon Island, so I don't want to cause trouble. The grudges between you all have nothing to do with me. The giant dragon shook its head, and a voice that could deafen an ordinary person sounded. The voice was filled with anger. If you want to live or die, you can do whatever you want on the Dragon Island. Now no one is allowed to make a move within the dragon travel. I'll pretend I didn't know what happened just now. If anyone dares to act rashly, humph, don't blame me for being impolite. After saying that, the giant dragon sneezed. The sound was as loud as thunder. Even someone as strong as Xiaohua felt his knees tremble slightly. Ao Zhantian and the other 2 almost fell to the ground as their knees buckled. After the giant dragon finished speaking, the entire dragon travel stirred up a hurricane, and the clouds surged like waves. In an instant, the giant dragon's body was swept away and disappeared. The giant dragon left, leaving behind the bewildered humans and monsters. After a while, the dragon travel trembled slightly, as if it was beginning to move. Then, waves of light flashed, and demonic chi filled the air again. The restrictions of the dragon travel were triggered again. The beasts and humans looked at each other and seemed to understand something. They all returned to their secluded places. Xiaohua and the other 3 returned to the pavilion and sat down. Ao Zhantian said in a low voice, Which Daoist is so bold? He actually dares to make a move within the dragon travel? Ao Moran replied without hesitation. Is there a need to ask? It must be a demon. To be able to make a move without being noticed by the dragon envoy, this kind of ability. I'm afraid there's no such thing in the human race. Hearing this, Ao Zhantian looked at Xiaohua thoughtfully. He was clearly suspicious of Xiaohua. However, when he thought about how Xiaohua was in the secluded room when the dragon envoy was angry, Ao Zhantian didn't think too much. He thought for a moment and asked curiously, since it's a demon with such strength, he must be outstanding in this trial. Why would he risk offending the Dragon Island by making a move here? Could it be that he feels that the gains from the experience on Dragon Island are not as great as the benefits of fighting? Ao Chiron smiled, shrugged his shoulders and said, This is not something that we can know. We're just human cultivators. It's already our great fortune to be able to enter the Dragon Island to train. Moreover, the place where we train is definitely not the same as those demon cultivators. Why do we have to think for them? That's right. Ao Moran also glanced at the silent Xiaohua and said, We won't offend the dragon envoy, so why should we care about them? Let's continue to discuss how to obtain more benefits in the training grounds. I heard that Su Province's Ao Gu has already joined forces with more than a dozen great masters who have refined their spirit to the void. Obviously, he has some ulterior motives. Ao Chiron lowered his voice and said with great dissatisfaction, We still need to be more careful. When Ao Zhantian heard this, his face darkened. He glanced at Xiaohua again and said with some regret, Unfortunately, when we went to visit Senior Ao Gu, he happened to not be in the pavilion. Humph. Old man. Ao Moran snorted and cursed. Brother Gentian, don't be fooled by him. Later on, I found out that he wasn't in the pavilion. It was because... Ahem. Ao Chiron coughed lightly and said, since Senior Ao Gu doesn't put our Qing province's Ao family in his eyes, why should we cling to him? Didn't Ao Moyan say that Ao Gu only has the dragon race in his eyes, and has always been proud of his pure bloodline? That Xiaohua listened for a bit, then smiled and said, Brothers Ao, please discuss this carefully. No matter what you decide, I will help fellow Taoist Gentian. I was just going to cultivate. Ao Gentian naturally knew the meaning of Xiaohua's words and replied, in that case, you should go meditate. Ao Chiron and Ao Moran nodded slightly with a trace of doubt in their eyes. When Xiaohua entered the meditation room and activated the restriction, Ao Moran said with a smile, Brother Gentian, your guard is really not simple. Oh. Ao Gentian was stunned and asked curiously, Brother Moran can see it. Only a fool can't see it. Ao Chiron said with a smile. Just now, when Lord Dragon Envoy showed his power, the three of us were so scared that we almost collapsed, but your guard's knees only went soft. He doesn't have dragon bloodline, so he doesn't need to be intimidated by Lord Dragon Envoy's dragon might. But with Lord Dragon Envoy's strength, even a human cultivator of the 5th level of essence power would be shocked. Ao Gentian smiled bitterly and nodded. You two brothers are right. Maybe I already have a certain understanding of Taoist Master Zhao's strength, so I turned a blind eye and didn't think too much about it. Ao Gentian emphasized Taoist Master Zhao, but Ao Chiron and Ao Moran didn't understand. It seemed that they really didn't know the name Xiaohua. Hee. With this help, we have a little more confidence. Ao Chiron smiled slightly, and then began to discuss with Ao Moran. Ao Gentian opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Xiaohua entered the quiet room and didn't pay attention to the movements outside, nor did he need to listen carefully. Naturally, it was some training arrangements. These had nothing to do with him, so he naturally wouldn't care. After sitting down cross-legged, Xiaohua seized the time to cultivate. After an unknown amount of time, a loud woo-woo sound rang out. The restriction outside the quiet room once again shook and disappeared in an instant. Although the dragon envoy's voice didn't ring out, Xiaohua was startled. He hastily sat up from the ground, looked at the empty pavilion, and hastily walked out of the pavilion. However, as soon as he stepped out of the pavilion, boom, a huge dragon's breath mixed with a wave-like fluctuation surged from afar. Wherever it went, everything within the dragon's travel was imprisoned. Xiaohua was shocked, but he quickly gave up resisting. After all, this fluctuation wasn't just the dragon envoy's divine ability, but also the entire travel of dragon's demonic formation. He was inside the demonic formation, so he probably couldn't resist. Moreover, Xiaohua was originally an outsider, so why would he need to add fuel to the fire? Who is it? The dragon envoy was no longer in his giant dragon demon form. Instead, he had transformed into a small dragon that was about 10 feet long. He roared in the air as he pushed the energy waves forward. He was holding 2 corpses of demonic beasts in his claws. One of them was a golden horn python that was about 10 feet long. The dragon horn on its forehead was already broken. The other was a lizard-like demonic beast, but this demonic beast's body was covered in dragon scales, and 2 half-inch long dragon horns also protruded from its forehead. This demonic beast's body was covered in bloody holes. These bloody holes had already dried up. The dragon envoy flew over Xiaohua's head and didn't even look at him. With a boom, the dragon tail smashed into the pavilion that was hundreds of feet away from Xiaohua, causing the entire pavilion to collapse. When he looked at the pavilion again, he didn't even see a shadow. Who knew if there were other human cultivators inside? Oh no, where did Ao Gentian go? Xiaohua was startled. In just the time it takes to smoke a cigarette, in the distant sky, there is a sudden clap of thunder. A demonic beast that looks like a rhinoceros appears in the midst of the clap of thunder. Xiaohua understands that this demonic beast is called Qingju. However, this Qingju was different from others. Although its body wasn't covered in dragon scales, the exposed parts were covered in layers of dragon patterns, especially its tail, which was curled up slightly. Speak. Chengju had just stabilized himself in the air when he saw a flash of light not far away. The dragon envoy's figure appeared, and a cold voice sounded. Did you do it? My lord, please calm down. Chengju's figure was slightly distorted in the lightning, and even his voice was trembling. However, his tone was still firm. This humble one definitely didn't do it. In the entire traveling dragon, only you are the mortal enemy of Dragon Python and Didiki. You dare say you didn't do it? The dragon envoy snorted coldly, and the lightning surged around Chengju like a roar. This humble one is the mortal enemy of those two. But now that I'm in Lord's traveling dragon, how can this humble one do it? Chengju felt wronged. Besides, this humble one passed the selection with great difficulty, and still wanted to train on Dragon Island. Even if this humble one wants to kill them, I have to go to Dragon Island first. On Dragon Island, I can get rid of them and also obtain treasures. Why wouldn't this humble one do it? Why would I offend Lord and Traveling Dragon? I've already suspected you. Of course, the dragon envoy wouldn't let Chengju go. He sneered. I warned you earlier. But why weren't you in the cave when Didiki died? I'll let Lord know. Chengju hurriedly shouted. This humble one has already met Dragon Python and Didiki before entering Traveling Dragon. They are my mortal enemies. How can this humble one fight against the two of them? This humble one naturally looked for help in Traveling Dragon. If you don't believe me, you can ask Qingqi. Qingqi. The dragon envoy roared and threw the two corpses in its claws into the air. The other claw under its abdomen reached out, and a demon with a snake's body and fleshy wings was pulled out from what seemed to be a dense forest in the distance. This humble one is here. Qingqi's voice was also trembling. The dragon envoy glanced at him and shouted, Is what Qingju said true? Yes, Qingqi screamed. Although this humble one didn't know Qingju's whereabouts when Lord stopped Traveling Dragon for the first time, Chengju was discussing with this humble one when Lord stopped Traveling Dragon. Just now Qingqi stole a glance at the dragon envoy and didn't continue. The dragon envoy was furious. Speak. If you wanted to discuss, why didn't you do it in your own cave? Qingqi smiled bitterly. My lord, some things are not easy to talk about in the cave. It won't attract attention outside. Chapter 3990. Chengjin. The dragon envoy exerted force with his claw, and a dozen deep cracks appeared on Chengjin's body, as if he was cut by a sharp sword. Do you want to live or die? If you don't want to talk, I'll just kill you right here and now. Yes, yes. At this point, how could Chengjin care about keeping it a secret? As he spoke, he hurriedly transmitted his voice. The dragon envoy's expression changed slightly. He looked at Chengjin and then at Ma Daichi, and thought for a moment. If that's the case, then, it really wasn't you who killed the dragon python? My lord, it definitely wasn't me. Chengjin smiled bitterly. I really didn't have to offend the dignity of Dragon Island in the Travel of Dragon. Damn it, then who was it? The dragon envoy roared again. With a swing of his claw, he threw Chengjin and Ma Daichi out of the air. Then, the dragon envoy grabbed a dozen powerful demons from the Travel of Dragon who could kill Chengjin and Ma Daichi. However, these demons all swore that they didn't do anything. They also had evidence that they didn't leave the cave, or the place where they were resting. In the end, the dragon envoy had no choice but to laugh coldly. With a swing of his tail, he flew away with the dragon python and Ma Daichi's corpse. After a while, the Travel of Dragon shook slightly and set sail again. Xiaohua felt the restrictions around him recede like the tide. Interesting. Xiaohua rubbed his chin and looked at the panicked humans and demons around him. He narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, there's a fight in the Travel of Dragon, but a demon actually killed two demons in a row under the dragon envoy's nose. Isn't this an obvious provocation to Dragon Island and the dragon envoy? But the strange thing is, the dragon envoy controls the entire Travel of Dragon. Can't he monitor the entire Travel of Dragon? Could it be that he can only drive the Travel of Dragon, but not control it? If that's the case, then what I do won't be noticed by him. When the surroundings quieted down, Xiaohua walked back to the pavilion. He didn't enter the quiet room, but sat outside and waited for Ao Zhantian. Sure enough, Ao Zhantian hurried back not long after. His face was pale, or even pale. When Ao Zhantian saw Xiaohua, he immediately asked, "Spiritual Master Xiao." These two demons. Xiaohua knew what Ao Zhantian was going to say, and he waved his hand with a smile. "I've been cultivating in my silent chamber this entire time, and I haven't left at all. How could the deaths of these two demonic beasts have anything to do with me? Besides, let's not talk about whether I have the strength to kill the dragon python and Dicky. Even if it's that dragon envoy, do you think I have the cultivation to hide from him?" Ao Zhantian's expression stabilized slightly, and he sat down with a smile. "Why not? If there is a human with such a cultivation base in the entire traveling dragon, in my eyes Reverend Xiao is the first choice." Ao Zhantian was obviously joking, and Xiaohua also spoke in a righteous manner. "Cultivator Ao, you can't say things like that. Otherwise, I'll report you to the dragon envoy for slander." Go ahead, enlightened Master," Ao Zhantian replied. "Master Dragon Envoy is in a terrible fix right now, so he won't care about you. If you go, you might just be offending Master Dragon Envoy, and he'll teach you a lesson." Xiaohua smiled and took out some spirit fruits from his space, and placed them on the jade table. He picked one up and put it in his mouth and asked, "Looking at your flustered appearance, could it be that these two matters are somewhat troublesome?" Ao Zhantian heaved a sigh of relief, and he also put a spirit fruit in his mouth. He chuckled. "Of course they're troublesome, and the entire traveling dragon is in an uproar. They're all discussing who has the guts to do this. To be honest." At this point, Ao Zhantian transmitted his voice. "Ao Chiron and the others suspect that a powerful expert has infiltrated the traveling dragon to cause trouble for Dragon Island. The first person I thought of was you." Xiaohua was taken aback. "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who isn't here for the trial," Ao Zhantian said mysteriously. "In fact, I don't think you have anything to ask of Dragon Island, so I can't help but suspect you." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "I don't have that kind of strength." Ao Zhantian pursed his lips and chuckled. "But why do I feel like you do?" "This." Xiaohua pondered for a bit, then became somewhat silent. If the Dragon Clan's messenger couldn't completely monitor the traveling dragon, with his superb concealment technique, whatever he wanted to do, the Dragon Clan's messenger really wouldn't be able to discover it. However, Xiaohua shook his head and smiled. "It doesn't matter if I have the strength or not. The important thing is, what kind of person am I?" "So," Ao Zhantian nodded. "Although I think you have the possibility, Taoist Master is merciful and won't hurt people easily. The demon race in the traveling dragon has nothing to do with me, so there's no need for Taoist Master to provoke them." "Then what are you worried about?" Xiaohua asked with a faint smile. Ao Zhantian smiled and didn't explain. Xiaohua didn't ask any more questions. Then Ao Zhantian told Xiaohua about what happened during this period of time. Only then did Xiaohua know that there were more than 1,900 humans and demon race that went to Dragon Island to train. Among them, there were more than 700 humans. These 700 people were spread across the 9 prefectures of the hidden immortal continent. Of course, according to other cultivators with the surname Ao, there were at least 4 such traveling Dragon Island, or even more. In other words, there were at least 8,000 descendants of the dragon tribe that went to Dragon Island for the trial. Although there were many human cultivators on the traveling Dragon Island, their strength was still a lot weaker than the demon race. However, the human race cultivators were best at forming alliances. During this period of time, the entire human race cultivators were roughly divided into 9 alliances according to the geography of the 9 regions. Outside of these alliances, there were also some small alliances formed by blood relatives or old friends. Because Ao Zhantian was a Dao sect cultivator, he couldn't integrate into the 9 alliances. He formed a small alliance with Ao Chiron, Ao Moran, and a dozen others. Of course, these dozen or so people couldn't compare to the hundreds of cultivators in the Great Alliance. However, according to Ao Zhantian, Ao Chiron was on good terms with a few cultivators from the Qing Province Great Alliance. Although he couldn't let them join the Great Alliance, if they could train together, they would be taken care of. When he heard the end, Xiaohua smiled lightly and asked, "Fellow Taoist Ao, your cultivation can be considered to be not bad among our Taoist sect's cultivators. However, compared to Confucian cultivators, it's quite a bit lacking. What benefits can you obtain by following them to gain experience like this? Ao Zhantian's expression was very bitter. He looked at Xiaohua and said, "This Ao wants to train with Taoist master, but Taoist master left this Ao alone. What do you want this Ao to do? Moreover, this Ao has already made it clear to Taoist master that the trial is secondary. The most important thing is to leave my name on Dragon Island. When this Ao breaks through in the future, I don't want to be killed by the Immortal Palace. Of course, if I can get some benefits from following Moran and the others, this Ao would be happy." "And that's true." Xiaohua nodded. "With fellow Taoist Ao's attitude, perhaps you can get some good benefits. Thank you for your kind words." Ao Zhantian smiled and asked, "This Ao has some small questions in his cultivation that I haven't been able to answer. I wonder if Taoist master can help me?" Xiaohua replied without hesitation, "Of course. This is something that this Xiao has already promised." Then Ao Zhantian asked some of his questions. Xiaohua didn't hide anything and told Ao Zhantian everything he knew. Ao Zhantian was enlightened and his whole body trembled. Xiaohua's lecture lasted for more than 10 days. On this day, Xiaohua had just shared some of his experiences from the nascent soul condensation stage to the spirit severing stage, and Ao Zhantian was listening with great interest. All of a sudden, the entire dragon travel trembled. However, unlike before, all the restrictions disappeared. However, both Xiaohua and Ao Zhantian's expressions changed slightly. They looked at each other and floated out of the pavilion at the same time. Sure enough, just outside the pavilion, the entire Dragon Island was filled with colorful clouds. In the air, there was the corpse of a demonic beast that was at least 1,000 feet long. This corpse looked like a rhinoceros, but its head was a dragon's head and its 4 hooves were similar to dragon claws. At this moment, there were still drops of blood dripping from the corpse, as if it had just been killed. "This is Jinghong." Ao Zhantian looked at the corpse and then at the humans and demonic beasts flying out of the Dragon Island. He whispered to Xiaohua, "In terms of strength, she should be at the lower 6th level of origin energy. She can be considered one of the top experts in the Dragon Island." "Damn it, what's going on?" Xiaohua frowned and whispered, 3 demonic beasts have already died. Who is the culprit? Could it be that the dragon envoy hasn't found the culprit yet? Hehe, you're amazing. This old man is full of admiration. At this moment, the dragon envoy's mocking voice came from the depths of the clouds. "You dare to disregard the dignity of the Dragon Island and commit murder on the Dragon Island? Don't you know that the Dragon Island is the final destination of the Dragon Island? Do you think you can escape the arrest of the Dragon Island?" The dragon envoy's voice reverberated in the air. Of course, no one from the demonic beasts or humans answered. However, it seemed like the dragon envoy didn't intend to hear any response. With a loud bang, Jinghong's corpse landed on the Dragon Island. The clouds in the sky disappeared and the dragon envoy was gone. "Sigh, so troublesome." Ao Zhantian sighed and turned to walk towards the pavilion. "This is the first time I've participated in a training exercise, and I've already encountered such a thing. When the Dragon Island arrives, who knows what kind of trouble will occur? Let's talk as we walk." Xiaohua didn't mind. After all, this was the demonic beast's grudge. The two returned to the pavilion and Ao Zhantian continued to listen to Xiaohua's teachings. However, after a few days, another loud bang came from the Dragon Island. This time, even Xiaohua was stunned. He stopped and looked at Ao Zhantian. Ao Zhantian also looked at Xiaohua. Neither of them stood up. After a while, Xiaohua said, "Taoist Ao, perhaps this matter is getting more and more troublesome." Chapter 3991. Ao Zhantian shrugged. After a moment of shock, his expression turned indifferent. "It has nothing to do with you or me. Why should we care?" "Sai, let's go out and take a look." Xiaohua thought for a moment and finally chose to stand up. Ao Zhantian stood up helplessly, as if he still hadn't recovered from his previous experience. However, when they walked out of the pavilion and saw the corpse floating in the air, they were all shocked. Because there was a human cultivator lying in the air. This cultivator was wearing a golden soft armor. At this moment, there was a huge hole in his chest. The soft armor was broken and blood was flowing out. Ao. Ao Jinghua. Ao Zhantian couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the face of this cultivator. He is a Confucian cultivator from the Jing province. Xiao Hua's heart tightened. He hurriedly asked, could it be that this Ao Jinghua is also at the 6th grade of Essence Force? When Ao Zhantian heard this, he seemed to have thought of something. He suppressed the fear in his heart and said in a low voice, I don't know Ao Jinghua's exact strength, but I heard that he is only at the 5th grade of Essence Force. This Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed. Previously, he and Ao Zhantian both thought that this was an internal conflict between the demon race, and that it involved the experts of the demon race. However, Ao Jinghua's death clearly told them that this was not just a matter of the demon race, but also the human race. Xiao Hua thought of it, so how could Ao Zhantian not think of it? Ao Zhantian's body turned cold. He looked left and right, as if the murderer who killed 3 demons and 1 human was staring at him from the side. Pa! With a loud sound, Ao Jinghua's corpse was thrown to the ground. This time, the Dragon Island messenger didn't even bother to speak. The colorful clouds in the sky disappeared again. After the Dragon Island messenger left, Ao Zhantian didn't have time to say anything. He hurriedly returned to the pavilion with Xiao Hua. Ao Zhantian entered the pavilion and hurriedly activated the restrictions. Then he released his divine sense and scanned the entire pavilion with suspicion. Only then did he calm down. Looking at Xiao Hua, who was sitting calmly, he smiled bitterly. Daoist Xiao is really calm. And Xiao Hua replied, no matter what, this is a matter of the descendants of the dragon bloodline. I am only an outsider. I won't be affected. But Ao Zhantian was just about to speak when the restrictions on the pavilion were triggered. Ao Zhantian exclaimed in shock, who is it? Brother Heavenslayer, it's me. Ao Mo Rant's voice came from outside the pavilion. Of course, this voice also revealed a trace of panic. Brother Mo Ran, please wait a moment. Ao Zhantian activated his keepsake and opened the restriction on the pavilion. He didn't rush over to greet Ao Moran as enthusiastically as he did in the past. Instead, he intentionally kept his distance. In fact, Ao Zhantian had even drawn closer to Xiao Hua. Ao Moran seemed to have something on his mind, and ignored Ao Zhantian's vigilance. Brother Zhantian, Mr. Mo Yuan has invited us over. Xiao Hua knew that this Mo Yun was Ao Moyun from Su province. He was the leader of Ao Zhantian's group of human cultivators. What is it, Mr. Mo Yun? Ao Zhantian asked with furrowed brows. Ao Moran faltered slightly before looking up at Ao Zhantian with an impatient expression. How would I know what's going on? Won't you know when you get there? Ow. All right. Ao Zhantian didn't want to go, but he had no choice. He looked at Xiao Hua with a pleading expression and said, Taoist Master Xiao, didn't you say that you wanted to see Mr. Mo Yuan's elegance? Why don't we go together? Xiao Hua nodded. Hee, of course. You just praised Mr. Mo Yuan as a rarity in this world. I've long admired him. Perhaps I'll pay him a visit now. Admire him? Ao Moran faltered slightly before a spurious smile appeared on his face. He nodded and said, then please, fellow immortals. Xiao Hua and Ao Zhantian then followed Ao Moran out of the pavilion. Ao Moyun's pavilion wasn't close to Ao Zhantian's. Although the 3 of them didn't use any flying techniques, their figures were like floating clouds and flowing water. It took them the time to finish a meal. Along the way, Xiao Hua saw many pavilions, ancient trees, ponds, and stone caves. However, without exception, all the restrictions were opened. It was rare to see any humans or demons outside the restrictions. The few demons that he saw were all staring at Xiao Hua, and the others like tigers eyeing their prey. They were abnormally vigilant. An aura of fear and trepidation gradually spread throughout the entire Longxing. Ao Moyun's pavilion was a little small, and the security was even higher than Ao Zhantian's. Ao Moran sent out a flying crane from afar. After the flying crane landed in the pavilion's restrictions were opened. Ao Chiron and another Confucian cultivator with an equally imposing appearance walked out. The Confucian cultivator looked at Ao Zhantian with some displeasure and said, Zhantian, why did you bring your guard here for no reason? Ao Chiron raised his eyebrows and hurriedly nudged the Confucian cultivator with his arm. He said with a smile, Ao Sun, although this Taoist master Xiao is Zhantian's guard, his strength is not bad. What's the use of strength? The Confucian cultivator named Ao Sun waved his hand. What time is it now? You still dare to bring a stranger here? This Ao Moran hesitated and said, although Taoist master Xiao has never been here, we have already seen him in Zhantian's pavilion. Seeing Ao Moran and Ao Chiron's expressions, Xiao Hua understood that this Ao Sun was probably more powerful than the two of them. He didn't want to make things difficult for Ao Zhantian, so he turned to Ao Zhantian and said with a smile, in that case, Taoist Zhantian, you can go in by yourself. This Xiao will return to the pavilion. All right, Ao Zhantian replied very apologetically. However, just as he opened his mouth, a leisurely female voice came from the pavilion. Ao Sun, let Taoist master Xiao in. Oh. When Xiao Hua heard this, he unconsciously raised his eyebrows. He suddenly realized that this voice should belong to Ao Moyun. In other words, Ao Moyun was a woman, and not a man like he thought. So it was no wonder that Ao Moyun's face showed such a strange expression when he said admiration earlier. Walking into the pavilion, he saw that there were already more than a dozen Confucian cultivators gathered in the hall. Although these Confucian cultivators had different faces, their arrogant temperament was extremely similar. At first glance, everyone looked a little arrogant. Looking at the head of the hall, a graceful woman was sitting calmly behind a jade table. This woman was wearing black profound armor, and looked valiant and formidable. Her beautiful face was like a peach blossom, and a pair of bright eyes were staring at Xiao Hua with interest. Alas, the bloodline of the dragon race is indeed powerful. Anyone in this pavilion would be a dragon or phoenix among men in the hidden immortal continent. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over, and saw the situation in the pavilion clearly. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Then, seeing Ao Moyun looking at him, he took a few steps forward and cupped his hands. I'm Xiao Hua. Greetings, fellow Taoist Moyun. Taoist Xiao Hua. Taoist Xiao. Ao Moyun floated up and returned the greeting. I've heard of Taoist Zhao's name since long ago, and I admire you greatly in my heart. But I didn't expect to actually meet Taoist Xiao here. Seeing that Ao Moyun, who had always been cold and arrogant, was actually so solemn, and his words actually contained admiration, the crowd of Confucian cultivators surnamed Ao was shocked. Some of the whispering Confucian cultivators stopped, and their gazes fell on Xiao Hua. I don't dare, Xiao Hua said with a smile. I'm just a nobody. Compared to brother Ao, I'm not just a little bit inferior. Then Xiao Hua looked around and cupped his hands. Fellow Taoists, I'm only the guard of fellow Taoist Zhantian. Please feel free to discuss whatever you want. I won't express any opinion. Haha. Seeing Xiao Hua like this, Ao Moyun said with a smile, I really didn't expect that Zhantian would be so lucky to actually find a good helper like Taoist Xiao. In this way, we can also bask in some of your glory. Xiao Hua knew that it wasn't good to be entangled in this kind of matter, so he smiled and found a corner to sit down cross-legged. He nodded slightly to everyone and stopped talking. When Ao Moyun saw that Xiao Hua didn't report his name to the other Confucian cultivators at all, he knew that Xiao Hua had no intention of getting involved in their plan, so it wasn't good for him to force it. He raised his hand with a smile on his face, and everyone followed him to sit down. Then he heard him clear his throat and say, Everyone, I presume that you all understand why I invited you here, right? That's right. A Confucian cultivator who was closer to Ao Moyun said. Previously, only the experts of the demon race were killed, so we didn't feel any sense of danger. We thought that it was an internal strife of the demon race, but we didn't expect that there would actually be cultivators of the human race killed today. If this isn't a cover-up, then there's something fishy about it. We're all extremely puzzled in our hearts. That's right. Another Confucian cultivator also said, previously we could still be bystanders, but now we have to be bystanders. Who wouldn't be afraid? If it weren't for Mr. Moyun inviting us here, we would have closed the pavilion and wouldn't even show our heads. What's the use of closing the restriction? Ao Moran sneered. Even His Majesty was killed, and even Sir Dragon Envoy couldn't find a trace of the murderer. the restriction inside the traveling dragon. When Ao Moran said this, his face suddenly turned pale, as if he had thought of something, and he looked at Ao Moyen with horror in his eyes. Ao Moyen smiled slightly and waved his hand. Moran, don't think too much. Sir Dragon Envoy is the envoy of Dragon Island. How could he do such a thing? Phew! Ao Moran breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile. These things are too unbelievable, so this little brother has to think more. Presumably, Sir Dragon Envoy won't blame me if he knows. If that's not the case, then there's a great expert hidden inside the traveling dragon that even Sir Dragon Envoy can't detect. Ao Gentian naturally had to say something, but just as he finished speaking, Ao Sun said coldly, "We already knew this, but what we want to know now is, what is this great expert doing? He killed 3 powerful demon race cultivators in a row, as well as a weak human race cultivator. For what reason? If it's purely to provoke Dragon Island, he only needs to kill the Dragon Envoy, right? There's no need to make things difficult for these dragon race descendants who have gone to Dragon Island for training, right?" Chapter 3992. Following that, the dozen or so Confucian cultivators began to speculate about the truth of the matter. However, even if everyone had a theory, who knew which was the real truth? As for Xiaohua, he had already closed his eyes and began to meditate. He didn't pay any attention to what everyone was saying. Ao Moyen would sometimes ask a question, and sometimes she would listen quietly. However, there would occasionally be a hint of anxiety in her eyes. She would even raise her head and look into the distance as if she was waiting for something. The group of Confucian cultivators discussed for half a day, but there was no conclusion. Ao Sun and the others stood up and prepared to leave. However, Ao Moyen smiled and said, "Could it be that you think I gathered everyone together, just to discuss this matter?" "Ah, what is it, Mr. Moyen?" Ao Sun was taken aback and hurriedly asked. Unfortunately, Ao Moyen smiled and didn't answer. Immediately, a look of realization appeared on Ao Gentian's face. He said in a low voice, "Mr. Moyen wants to gather us together to prevent the murderer from killing us separately?" Ao Moyen nodded slightly, and a smile blossomed on her gorgeous face. But Ao Sun was still a little hesitant. He said in a low voice, "If the murderer really wants to kill us, even if we gather together," a Confucian cultivator said impatiently, "we have no enmity with the murderer. At this time, we are afraid that we will be killed by the murderer. If we gather together, the chances of us being killed will be much lower." "Yes, yes," another Confucian cultivator said with a smile. "I am already in a daze at this time. Mr. Moyen is still calm and thoughtful. I will meditate here. The murderer must be afraid of exposing his tracks in front of us." Then the few Confucian cultivators didn't leave. Everyone sat down, either composing poems or painting. Some people even drank wine and sang. They looked very satisfied. However, everyone was a little absent-minded like Ao Moyen, as if they were waiting for something. This time they didn't have to wait for long. In just a few days, a scream came from outside the restriction of the pavilion. "Let's go." Although Ao Moyen was a little surprised, he immediately flew out from behind the jade table and rushed out of the pavilion. Seeing Ao Moyen fly out, the dozen or so Confucian cultivators also followed him out. Ao Gentian flew out a few steps and was once again impressed. He called Xiaohua, and only then did he follow Xiaohua out. Xiaohua and the others came out of the pavilion. The 5-colored clouds had not appeared in the space of Longxing yet. Looking at the left side of the pavilion, there were already several demon clan members flying in the air. These demon clan members' ugly faces carried a trace of horror. Xiaohua and the others flew closer, and saw clearly that this was a cave inside a hill. The restriction outside the cave had been torn apart long ago, and the hard mountain rocks had also been destroyed. Half of 100 Zhonglong monster peeked out from the broken rocks. Its head was badly mutilated, and it was impossible to tell what kind of monster it was. However, looking at the dragon scales on its body and the claws that were deeply embedded in the mountain rocks, everyone knew that this monster was tyrannical. "This is Qiuyu?" Xiaohua looked at this monster that looked like a wild bull, and knew that it was the bloodline of Qiu Niu, the son of the dragon. He asked probingly. Ao Moyen bit his lips. and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He then nodded and said, "Yes, this is Qiuyu. But his strength is only at the upper 5th grade of essence power. He hasn't fully matured yet." Roar. At this time, the roar of Lord Dragon Envoy came from afar. Layers of clouds surged over like a tide. A huge dragon claw peeked out from the clouds and grabbed Qiuyu's corpse. Then it disappeared again. "Shall we go over?" Ao Sun looked at Ao Moyun and asked in a low voice. Ao Moyun shook his head slightly and said with a wry smile, "Since we already know, why should we go over and take a look? Now that the interval between killing is getting shorter and shorter, they must want to take advantage of the time before Long Xing arrives at Dragon Island to kill all the humans and monsters they want to kill." Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. He looked at Ao Moyun with some puzzlement. At the same time, a few Confucian cultivators noticed Ao Moyun's words. They looked at each other and said, "Shall we go back and talk about it?" Then Ao Moyun ordered a few Confucian cultivators to go and explore, and the others returned to the pavilion. Ao Moyun originally wanted to activate the restriction, but after looking at the restriction of the pavilion and thinking about the restriction of the cave, Ao Moyun sighed slightly and simply threw the token on the jade table. "Why did Mr. Moyun say they? Isn't it just a few monsters?" A Confucian cultivator asked curiously. "Why can't I see any clues?" Ao Moyun was a little absent-minded. He glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, "I don't know, it's just a wild guess." "No way." The Confucian cultivator pretended to be exaggerated. "Is there anything in this world that Mr. Moyun can't predict?" "Alas, of course." Ao Moyun sighed. "In this world, except for the immortal emperor, who can search the whole continent, even the immortal emperor can't know the movements of the whole hidden immortal continent." Maybe Ao Moran guessed. Just as Mr. Moyun said, "These are a few monsters. The strong ones went to attack His Majesty and the others, and the weak ones went to attack Qiuyu and the humans. If there are really a few of them, no wonder Lord Dragon Envoy couldn't find them." Ao Zhantian nodded slightly, but then he asked curiously, "But even if we know how many of them there are, what is their purpose? Who knows?" A Confucian cultivator shrugged. "There are many inexplicable things in this world. Who knows what the reason is? But if there are too many of them," Ao Sun looked at the unactivated restriction and said in a low voice, "Even if we gather together, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist them. If we gather together, we'll be able to take care of each other." Ao Zhantian said hurriedly. Oh no, just when everyone didn't know what to say, a voice came from outside the pavilion. Everyone was shocked and looked up, only to see a few Confucian cultivators who had just gone to gather information hurriedly flying back. One of them looked so flustered that he couldn't help but cry out before he reached the pavilion. "What's wrong?" Ao Moyun frowned slightly, looking a little displeased. "Mr. Moyun," the Confucian cultivator said hurriedly. "This time, besides Qiuyu, Liang Yong was also killed. Especially." Before the Confucian cultivator could finish, another Confucian cultivator beside him rushed to say, "Ao Feng of the Qing province was also killed in his own pavilion along with a dozen or so humans." Not only were Ao Moyun and the other Confucian cultivators dumbfounded, even Xiaohua was shocked. If that was the case, then this trip to the Dragon Island was not a rewarding trip, but a frightening one. "Is that true?" Ao Sun couldn't believe his ears and couldn't help but ask. The Confucian cultivator in front of him was still in shock, and he said in a shrill voice, "If you don't believe me, you can go and see for yourself." Ao Sun thought for a moment, and really did fly out of the pavilion. But in just a few breaths' time, he turned back and shouted as soon as he entered the pavilion, "Which fellow immortal wants to come with me to take a look? The Dragon Island is very cold right now, and there isn't even a single person in sight. My heart is trembling." Although Ao Sun's strength was not comparable to Ao Moyun's, he was still a Confucian cultivator of the 5th stage origin energy realm. How could he say such cowardly words under normal circumstances? But when he said such words, no one felt that there was anything wrong with it. Even the Confucian cultivator who rushed to say something shrunk his neck and waved his hand. "If you want to go, then go. When I turned back just now, I was also scared. I was scared that the mysterious murderer would suddenly appear." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, I'll go with you. Ao Zhantian hurriedly said, I'll go too. Then the three of them left the pavilion. Just as Ao Sun said, the entire Dragon Island was very cold and desolate, and there seemed to be an indescribable sense of danger everywhere. The three of them flew in the air, and they felt as if there was a pair of eyes peeping at them. Xiaohua was a little confused. He couldn't figure out whether this feeling was real, or just a fear that came from the bottom of his heart. The place where the dragon envoy's corpse was now filled with the smell of blood. Other than a few gigantic monster corpses, there were also dozens of human corpses stained with blood. It seemed that the human corpses were even more terrifying than the monster corpses. Their heads were either smashed or their bodies destroyed. Almost none of their corpses were intact. Xiaohua's gaze swept across the corpses, and he couldn't even tell who these corpses belonged to. Xiaohua sighed and looked around. Other than the three of them, there wasn't a trace of life in the surroundings. It was completely different from when he first came to the Dragon Island. All the humans and monsters were in a state of panic, afraid that the murderer's claws would fall on their heads. Let's go. Although Ao Sun didn't believe it, he came to check it himself. But when he saw the situation, his heart felt empty, and an indescribable sense of terror filled his heart. He looked around vigilantly and said in a low voice, Let's hurry back while the murderer is still worried. Xiaohua and the other two returned to the loft even faster than when they came. This time no one asked anything. The previous slightly noisy atmosphere was swept away by silence. Everyone sat there, full of thoughts. No one knew what they were thinking. Even Ao Mayan had lost his previous quick-wittedness. His eyebrows were tightly knitted, and his eyes were a little dull. Xiaohua still walked to the corner and sat down. He closed his eyes and pondered. Unfortunately, he knew very little, and he was confused. After half a day, Ao Mayan coughed, got up, and said with a forced smile, Since we can't escape being killed even if we gather together, then there's no need to gather together. If we scatter, we may have a chance to save our lives. Sigh, it's a pity that the dragon envoy who controls the Dragon Island is so irresponsible, treating our lives like grass. What can we do? What can we do? In the eyes of the dragon envoy, we are just bastards who cling to the Dragon Island. Ao Sun's tone was also unkind. Our lives and deaths are not important. What's important is that he wants to bring the Dragon Island back. At that time, no matter who the murderer is, he will be arrested by the Dragon Island. Chapter 3993. How could it be that simple? Ao Mayan sneered, then looked around. His gaze fell on a Confucian cultivator, and he said, Yuping, come here. I have something to tell you. The Confucian cultivator called Yuping was stunned. He hurriedly got up and said, What are your orders, Mr. Mayan? This matter is a bit secretive. Follow me to the quiet room to talk. Ao Mayan's figure flashed, and walked towards the quiet room. Ao Yuping hesitated for a moment, and then followed him into the quiet room. Then, Ao Mayan activated the restrictive spell of the quiet room. After a while, Ao Yuping walked out of the quiet room with a frown on her face. Su Jing, please come here as well. Ao Mayan didn't follow him out, but his voice was heard. So, a slightly short Confucian cultivator looked at Ao Yuping, then hurriedly got up and entered the quiet room. Just like that, Ao Mayan called 3 more people into the quiet room to talk. After the 5th person walked out, Ao Mayan said to everyone's surprise, Daoist Master Xiao, can I trouble you to come to the quiet room? Oh. Xiaohua opened his eyes and looked at the quiet room in surprise. He had the same expression as the other 5 people, but he still entered the quiet room after thinking for a while. After Ao Mayan activated the restriction, Xiaohua sat cross-legged in front of Ao Mayan, and asked puzzledly, What advice does Mr. Mayan have? It's not advice. Ao Mayan raised his hand and took out a jade eye from his bosom. He handed it to Xiaohua and said, I have something to entrust to Daoist Master. Oh. Xiaohua was even more stunned. He didn't take the jade eye and asked, What is this? Could it be that you have entrusted to all the fellow immortals who came in earlier? Everyone else is just a cover. Ao Mayan shook his head slightly. I really want to entrust it to Daoist Master. Then I can't accept it even more. Xiaohua shook his head and said, I've never met you before, and I don't have their dragon bloodline. I'm not worthy of fellow immortals' trust. It's because Taoist Master and I have never met before. And it's also because Taoist Master doesn't have true dragon bloodline that I'm entrusting this to Taoist Master. Could it be this thing is related to the murder on Longxing? Or the person the murderer is looking for? You? Xiaohua asked. Judging from the current situation, I can't come to a conclusion. At this point, Ao Moyin no longer concealed anything and said, however, judging from these dead descendants of the dragon clan, it's very likely that I'm the murderer's target. Oh, of course, this item has nothing to do with the murderer. It's just some records about my bloodline that I left behind. It won't cause you any trouble. Fellow immortal, you seem to have some hidden troubles. Xiaohua's eyes flickered as he asked. Spiritual Master, please keep this jade eye first. Ao Moyin urged. I can't keep you here for too long, Taoist. Once you hear about my death, the restriction within these jade eyes will naturally be removed. You'll know when you take a look at it yourself. Sorry, Xiaohua waved his hand. This Xiao has never been interested in these mysterious things. If you want to entrust it to someone else, you should entrust it to someone else. Alas, Spiritual Master, you don't understand. Ao Moyin shook his head and transmitted his voice. This item involves the 10 clans of the Dragon Island, and they are all unreliable. Only an outsider like you can be trusted by me. Moreover, I've already heard about Spiritual Master Zhao's good deeds in the blood pool of gods and demons. Even I can't trust Spiritual Master Xiao. Could it be that you want me to trust Ao Zhantian? The 10 clans of the Dragon Island? What does that mean? Xiaohua's heart trembled, and he hurriedly asked. Ao Moyin shook his head slightly, looked around, and still transmitted his voice. I can't talk too much about the Dragon Island. If Spiritual Master wants to know what's recorded in these jade eyes is haha, then this Xiao can't take it. Xiaohua stood up and laughed. Fellow immortal, if you entrust this item to this Xiao, you'll be free of your burden. If the murderer comes looking for this item, won't this Xiao be in great danger? Fellow immortal, please remove the restriction. This Xiao is going out. Spiritual Master Xiao Ao Moyin was anxious, and hurriedly stood up and said, this item really won't bring you any disaster. Xiaohua waved his hand very unreasonably. This Xiao doesn't want to get involved in the internal strife of the Dragon Island, and even more don't want to provoke the 10 clans of the Dragon Island. Mister, you should find someone else. Alas. All right. Seeing Xiaohua so resolute, Ao Moyin was extremely helpless. He looked at Xiaohua faintly and removed the restriction. After Xiaohua left, she opened her mouth. She originally planned to find another Confucian cultivator after Xiaohua, but after thinking for a while, she lowered her head dispiritedly and followed Xiaohua out of the quiet room. Everyone, Ao Moyin forced a smile and said, I've already explained some things to the 6 fellow immortals. We'll talk about the rest after we get to the Dragon Island. Alright, since that's the case, Mr. Moyin, you also take care of yourself. The Confucian cultivators all stood up and bid farewell. And there was a hint of the wind is blowing and the water is cold in their tone. When Xiaohua followed Ao Zhantian back to the pavilion, Ao Zhantian immediately pulled Xiaohua and asked, what did Mr. Moyin say to you? TSK Xiaohua waved his hand and said, what can he say? I thought it was something important, and just some gossip. Now that I think about it, it was to cover for one of the 5 people in front of us. He as expected. Ao Zhantian smiled. If I'm not mistaken, it should be that Ao Yuping. He's usually very close to Mr. Moyin. Xiaohua looked at Ao Zhantian with an exasperated expression. You're still guessing at a time like this? You should think about saving your own life first. Of course. Ao Zhantian looked at the restrictions around him and said with a smile, these tattered restrictions really can't compare to the spell formations of our Taoist sect. In order to save your own life, shouldn't you show us some of your skills? Yes, I don't need you to tell me that. Xiaohua said as he walked into the silent room. He took out a jade talisman and set up the capital star formation. Come in, fellow Taoist Ao. With this spell formation, we might have a 30% better chance than the others. Haha, Taoist Master Xiao is really my lucky star. Ao Zhantian said joyfully as he entered the capital star formation. He immediately knew that this was the spell formation of the Black Wind Ridge, after scanning it with his divine sense. You can stay here. Xiaohua extended a hand and said, Give me your token from the dragon tribe. Oh, you're not going to stay here? Ao Zhantian was taken aback. I don't have the bloodline of the dragon tribe. What am I afraid of? Xiaohua said with a smile. There's no one in the pavilion. If something happens to the dragon tribe, we won't know. Then I'll have to trouble you, Taoist Master Xiao. Ao Zhantian was really grateful to Xiaohua and handed the token to him. Xiaohua exited the spell formation and sat behind the jade table. He narrowed his eyes and looked outside the pavilion. He turned the token over and over in his hand as if he was thinking about something. However, it was only for a moment. Xiaohua waved his hand and put the token away. He then closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Half a day later, the dragon envoy's voice boomed like thunder. Everyone, come out of the restriction. I'd like to see who dares to kill a descendant of the dragon clan under my nose. Xiaohua laughed coldly. This dragon tribe's envoy is finally enlightened. With all the Yao and humans gathered together, the dragon tribe's envoy can borrow the power of the dragon tribe to find the culprit. Even if he can't find the culprit, he should be able to prevent more Yao and humans from being killed. This is probably not the dragon tribe's envoy's idea. It must be a suggestion from some Yao or humans. Thus, Xiaohua removed the restriction on the pavilion, and also the capital star formation. He followed Ao Zhantian out of the pavilion. At this time, the restriction on the dragon tribe was still in place. He couldn't release his origin sense. The entire sky of the dragon tribe was covered in colorful clouds. Although the dragon tribe's envoy didn't reveal himself, there was an unconcealable dragon might leaking out from the roiling clouds. The dragon tribe's envoy and Xiaohua's idea was relatively ideal. However, the Yao race wasn't humans. Although some of them had transformed into human form, they didn't gather as closely as the humans. Even the humans were in a competitive relationship. When they arrived at the training grounds, they might have to fight to the death. Thus, they formed small groups and didn't truly gather as one. Xiaohua and Ao Zhantian were naturally with Ao Moyun and the others. At this time, Ao Moyun's face was a little pale. Her eyes were filled with fear as she looked left and right. It was obvious that her heart wasn't calm. Although there were quite a lot of Yao and humans, about 2,000 of them, they looked like a black mass at a glance. However, so many Yao and humans didn't say anything. The entire dragon tribe was as silent as before. Before the dragon tribe reaches Dragon Island, all of you should wait here. The dragon tribe's envoy's voice came from the clouds. This envoy doesn't believe that anyone would dare. Oh, damn it. Before the dragon tribe's envoy could finish speaking, another scream came from afar. Then the dragon tribe's envoy roared angrily from the clouds. The dragon tribe's envoy's huge body swooped down. Its 2 dragon claws landed on the place where the scream came from like lightning. Rumble, a series of loud sounds came. Rocks and other debris in the distance soared into the sky. It seemed that there was a struggle. However, a moment later, the dragon tribe's envoy's angry roar sounded again. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Run, seeing that the murderer was so unscrupulous and daring to commit murder in front of the dragon tribe's envoy and so many Yao and humans. Some of the smarter humans already understood that within the dragon tribe, even the dragon tribe's envoy couldn't protect them. If they wanted to survive, they had to rely on themselves. Therefore, they shouted unconsciously and flew into the distance. It was as if they would be safe as long as they were far away from this place. Since someone had escaped, the pessimistic mood immediately spread throughout the dragon tribe. The Yao and humans who had just seen hope scattered again. Everyone ran for their lives. Fellow immortals, seeing that Ao Moyun and the others were also about to escape, Xiaohua hurriedly called out, "Follow this Xiao to the pavilion first." Yes, yes. Ao Zhantian also thought of something and urged, "Mr. Moyun, let's go to my pavilion first. The Taoist has some defensive methods." Chapter 3994. You, what means do you have? Ao Moran was a little surprised and shouted in panic. Even the dragon envoy can't find the murderer. How can you protect us? However, Moyin waved his hand calmly and said, "Let's go and take a look. I believe in Taoist Zhao's means." Since Moyin had spoken, although the others wanted to escape, they couldn't escape from Longxing no matter how hard they tried. They simply followed Xiaohua and flew to Zhantian's pavilion. When they saw Xiaohua's capital star array, their faces were full of shock. Zhantian said proudly, "This is the capital star array set up by Taoist Xiao. It's the same as the one set up by the Immortal Palace in the Black Wind Ridge. With such a formation, I believe we have a better chance of survival." "Oh Xiaohua Taoist Xiao." Hearing this, Sun slapped his forehead and exclaimed, "I remember now. Are you that Taoist Xiao?" Xiaohua smiled and said, "Let's not talk so much. Let's enter the array first. Although my array formation can't protect the entire Longxing, it should be able to protect the few of you." "Thank you, Taoist Xiao." Sun, Moran, and the others cupped their hands and hurriedly entered the array. At this time, even if they didn't believe Xiaohua, they could only treat it as a last resort. After everyone had entered, Moyin stood there without moving a single step. Xiaohua knew what Moyin was thinking and said in a low voice, "Mr. Moyin, could it be? You don't believe me?" "Yes." Zhantian also said anxiously, "Since you're here, you'd better hide for a while." Moyin smiled and showed a rare relaxed face. He asked, "Taoist Xiao, do you think you can stop that murderer?" Xiaohua shook his head without thinking. "I don't have that kind of strength." "That's right," Moyin said with a smile. "If I hide inside, I'm afraid it will bring disaster to you. At that time, not only will I not be able to survive, but all of you will also be implicated by me. Since that's the case, why should I go in? Taoist Xiao, thank you for your help. My family really can't repay you. Goodbye." After that, Moyin turned around and left without any reluctance. Zhantian was taken aback. He had never heard Moyin refer to himself as a concubine. Moreover, he hadn't expected Moyin to be so decisive and leave just like that. Taoist Master Zhantian looked at Moyin walking out of the pavilion and asked with a puzzled expression, "What's going on?" "Sai, how would I know? You can go in." Xiaohua waved his hand and followed Moyin out of the pavilion. Outside the pavilion, it was truly a mess. The bleak atmosphere was even colder than the cold winter. Moyin's originally plump back was particularly striking in this biting cold. Xiaohua did not give chase, he only stood there and watched from afar. He was rather puzzled. This matter is truly strange, since the murderer has such powerful strength and can even avoid the dragon envoy's primordial thought. Then why didn't he make a move earlier? This murderer killed the monster clan and the human clan in front of the dragon envoy without being detected by the dragon envoy. Needless to say, he also used the dragon clan's concealment technique, which is somewhat similar to the dragon clan's secret technique of the heavenly abode river. Also, this Moyin seems to have noticed something, but why didn't she go to the dragon envoy? Besides, this dragon envoy doesn't seem to be afraid of being attacked by the murderer, nor does he care about the lives of these descendants of the dragon clan. His mission seems to be just to bring these descendants of the dragon clan to the dragon island. Does he not care about how many he can bring? In fact, from an unimaginable point of view, maybe this murderer and the dragon envoy are in cahoots? The more Xiaohua thought about it, the more he frowned. Moreover, the more he thought about it, the more scared he became. His previous detachment from this matter gradually faded. Watching Moyin's figure disappear, Xiaohua quietly released his soul consciousness and looked around. After confirming that there was nothing strange, he returned to the pavilion. However, he only entered the capital star formation and told everyone that Moyin was unwilling to come. Then he sat upright in the pavilion again. Dozens of days later, the entire Longxing was completely shrouded in the horror of the murder. Almost every 10 days, one or more monster clan and human clan would be inexplicably killed, and all the corpses would be placed in one place. At this time, no one from the human clan or the monster clan went to watch the show. Every one of them was trembling in fear and trepidation, worried that they would be found by the cruel murderer. As for what the dragon envoy was doing, Xiaohua did not know. He only instructed the green-robed Xiaohua to control the invisible Yuanying and hide in a corner of the pavilion. He also instructed the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua to prepare his Xiantian true qi at all times, ready to face the seemingly omnipresent murderer and fight for his own survival. On this day, when Xiaohua slowly withdrew his soul consciousness from outside the pavilion and was about to meditate, his heart suddenly moved. He thought of Ao Moyin's strange behavior. He unconsciously patted his forehead and said with some regret, "Alas, this Xiao is also a little flustered. This Ao Moyin seems to be somewhat familiar with the Dragon Island. Since she knows the 10 clans of the Dragon Island, she must also know the location of the Dragon Cleansing Pool. How could this Xiao forget to ask her?" Thinking of this, Xiaohua stood up and instructed the green-robed Xiaohua. He used the Dragon Clan's concealment technique and stealthily moved towards Ao Moyun. If it was a normal time, Xiaohua would certainly fly over in the air, but at this time, Xiaohua did not dare to be careless. He did not ask for speed, only to not leave any trace. When he arrived in front of Ao Moyin's pavilion, it was the same as when Xiaohua and the others left. The pavilion's restriction was not activated at all. It seemed that Ao Moyin had already given up resistance and was waiting for the murderer to arrive. Xiaohua did not dare to act blindly without thinking. He released a wisp of soul consciousness and looked around. Then he quietly urged the wood escape technique to sneak into the pavilion. Before his figure could appear, he heard Ao Moyin's faint but somewhat trembling voice in his ear. "You finally found me." Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He didn't know how Ao Moyin had discovered his whereabouts. Almost without thinking, Xiaohua waved his hands and shot out several secret arts. First, he confined the space of several hundred feet around him. Then he transmitted his voice. "Mr. Moyin, this Xiao has come. This Xiao has suddenly thought of a way that can save your life and not implicate the rest of us." "Ah, you are Taoist Master Xiao?" Ao Moyin was naturally shocked. How do you know the dragon technique of my dragon clan?" Just when Xiaohua had just revealed himself and had yet to answer, a kind of indescribable fear arose in Xiaohua's heart. It was as if a great danger was approaching Xiaohua. Ao Moyin's face was even more pale, and he opened his mouth to urge Xiaohua to flee. Since he had come to this point, how could Xiaohua hesitate? He raised his hand and took out the mountain river seal that he had prepared a long time ago. He transmitted his voice. "Fellow immortal, don't struggle." As he spoke, Xiaohua's mind swept towards Ao Moyin. How could Ao Moyin not know Xiaohua's plan when he saw the mountain river seal? People often say that even ants are greedy for life, let alone Ao Moyin, who had succeeded in cultivation. She immediately gave up resisting, and her figure was immediately taken into the space along with Xiaohua's mind. Xiaohua did not hesitate. He hurriedly withdrew the spell, and his figure flashed and rushed to the side of the pavilion. In this split second, an extremely secretive and powerful origin was born out of nowhere, and it swept past the place where Ao Moyin's figure had been. "Ha!" A very obscure voice of surprise followed, and then there was a loud bang. An extremely powerful attack fell from the sky and pierced through the entire pavilion. Everything in the pavilion was turned into fragments. "How dare you!" Just when that origin was still searching, the furious voice of the dragon envoy above the 5-colored clouds sounded like thunder, and a huge dragon claw turned into lightning and grabbed down. Unfortunately, although the dragon claw had imprisoned the space of about 100 feet, when the dragon claw fell, it was still empty. It did not even touch a scale of the murderer. Since it did not find the murderer, the dragon claw waved again in the ruins of the pavilion, but did not find Ao Moyin's corpse. The dragon claw paused for a moment. Obviously, this was the first time it did not see the corpse after the murderer appeared. However, the dragon envoy only hesitated for a moment, and the dragon claw retracted back into the clouds. After the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, some demon race members appeared nearby. These demon race members poked their heads out mournfully, looked at the broken pavilion, shook their heads slightly, and went away. In Ao Zhantian's pavilion, Xiaohua's figure appeared. His face was waxy yellow. He sat down cross-legged, took out a jade bottle, and poured out a few pills to consume. After the time it took to eat a meal, his face finally became rosy. "Damn it!" Xiaohua coughed and cursed in a low voice. This evil creature has the strength of the 7th level of origin power, which is half a level higher than the dragon envoy. I'm afraid he can do whatever he wants in the travel dragon. Who can be his match? Just as he finished cursing, Xiaohua came to a realization. Since he had saved Ao Mayun, then the murderer, whose strength exceeded the other demon race members, would naturally be looking for him again. Ao Zhantian and the others were definitely the targets of the search. If Ao Mayun's guess was correct, then Ao Zhantian and the others were definitely not the murderer's targets. Not only was he not helping them by hiding them in the capital star formation, he was harming them instead. Xiaohua hurriedly stood up, and with a wave of his hands, he put away the jade talismans of the capital star formation. Ao Zhantian and the others inside the formation were shocked, and hurriedly asked, "Enlightened Master, what are you doing?" Xiaohua did not have time to explain, and he made up a story. It has been more than 10 days, and no demon race members have been killed. I'm afraid that the murderer. Before Xiaohua could finish his words, a wave of origin power suddenly fell from above everyone's heads, and a dragon's might that could instantly kill everyone swept over. Not good. The group of Confucian cultivators turned pale with fright, and Xiaohua was also shocked. He rubbed his hands together, and a bolt of lightning appeared out of thin air, striking toward the top of the pavilion. Chapter 3995. It was exactly the same as the voice Xiaohua heard from Ao Mayun. However, as soon as this voice appeared, it immediately disappeared along with the dragon's aura, as if nothing had happened just now. Xiaohua's lightning surged out and hit the pavilion, completely destroying the roof of the pavilion, revealing the colorful clouds outside the pavilion. The group of Confucian cultivators were somewhat in disbelief. This life and death situation appeared too suddenly, and left even more abruptly. As strong as they were, the murderer had already disappeared with the wind by the time they raised their chi. They almost didn't dare to believe their eyes. Similarly, as soon as the murderer left, the dragon envoy's roar sounded again, but this roar was like rolling thunder that gradually faded away. After a full half cup of tea's time, Ao Zhantian asked in a trembling voice, "Daoist, just now, did a dragon senior appear?" "Yes." Xiaohua withdrew his invisible nascent soul, suppressed the surprise in his heart, and answered indifferently. Ao-san also asked, "Since he left, then we are not the ones he wants to kill." "It should be." Xiaohua turned around and looked at these Confucian cultivators, then walked towards the quiet room. "So, we don't have to be afraid of being killed by him?" Ao Moran asked again timidly, just like a little student asking a professor a question. Xiaohua also answered, "There should be no need to be afraid. However, don't leave here, just stay here. Since he came once, he probably won't come again. Zhantian has some spirit fruits and spirit wine, enjoy them slowly, but don't show too much, just wait for the dragon to come ashore." Okay, happiness came too suddenly. Ao Chiron and the others didn't know how to answer, only trembling and saying a few words. All of them fell to the left side of the jade table. Logically speaking, they were all grandmasters around the 5th level of elemental energy. Even if they were facing a mortal enemy and in the face of death, they wouldn't have lost their composure. However, in this kind of torturous atmosphere, they had been tormented for several months. Every time they thought that they could lose their lives at any time, this kind of fear was eroding their ambition. At this moment, their state of mind was clearly different from the Dao realm of Xiaohua and the other Daoist cultivators. When they were relaxed, when they had escaped from the calamity, it was inevitable that some instinctive actions would appear. Xiaohua entered the quiet room and didn't activate any restrictions. Instead, he simply sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. Within the pavilion, Ao Zhantian and the others rested for a moment before taking out some spirit fruits to consume. However, they didn't relax like Xiaohua. Instead, they all began to cultivate. More than a few months passed in the blink of an eye. The rhythm of the invisible murderer's attacks began to slow down. In the end, it finally calmed down. The nervousness of being in a state of panic also slowly disappeared. It was as if the murderer's targets were all dead. The murderer no longer appeared. The remaining demon clan and human clan seemed to have escaped from the sky and gradually began to become active. A total of 47 demons and 13 humans died in the hands of the murderer, making a total of 60. The strength of these dead bodies was also uneven. Most of them were at the middle of the 5th grade, and were not the demonic beast experts that Ao Zhantian and the others had imagined. It was also because of this that most of the demons and humans didn't know why the murderer's target was the deceased. This seemed to be an unsolvable mystery. However, all of the demons and humans, including the Dragon Island emissary who controlled the Dragon Island, believed that there would be a day when the truth would be revealed. And that day would be the day when the Dragon Island neared the Dragon Island. The Dragon Island silently traversed the seabed. In the dark green seawater, one couldn't see the exact shape of the Dragon Island. One could only see a flash of brilliance before it disappeared into the sea. The flowing light arrived at a very ordinary part of the sea. The flowing light abruptly stopped and a droplet of water that was thousands of feet in size appeared in the sea. In an instant, all of the fish in the sea were frightened and frantically swam away. The Dragon Island only stopped for a few breaths. A strange wave of energy spread out from the Dragon Island. Then the Dragon Island began to move along with the energy wave. In the beginning, the Dragon Island moved extremely slowly. However, it gradually sped up. In the time it took to eat a meal, the Dragon Island became a flowing light again. However, this time the flowing light was different from before. A spiral ripple formed at the tip of the Dragon Island. As the flowing light formed, it rapidly spread out to the outer layer of the Dragon Island. What was special was that as the spiral ripple swept across, the color of the flowing light became even fainter. Gradually, the flowing light couldn't be seen clearly. The moment the flowing light became completely transparent, the flowing light seemed to have stopped. The entire flowing light rushed towards an invisible droplet of water in the sea. There was no fluctuation, no barrier. The flowing light shrunk little by little. Finally, it fell into the millions of droplets of seawater. Those who didn't understand the mysteries of the Dragon Island would never have thought that the famous Dragon Island was actually inside a droplet of water. This droplet was in an unknown part of the sea. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Who could find it? The demons and humans inside the Dragon Island couldn't see through the Dragon Island. Naturally, they couldn't know that they were already inside a droplet of water. At this moment, Xiaohua was meditating with his eyes closed. Suddenly he heard a rip sound. The entire Dragon Island seemed to have been torn apart. Torrential seawater fell from the sky. All the pavilions, rocks, quagmires, and so on inside the Dragon Island disappeared in the seawater. Xiaohua and the others were startled. They hastily raised their heads to look. They only saw a huge continent in the sea that they couldn't see the end of. This entire continent was similar to the Soul Cultivator's remnant Xiaohua saw in the Forbidden Spring Ocean. It was completely submerged in the seawater. On this continent, there were mountain ranges, plains, hills. There were fishes, seaweed, and seaweed in the seawater. And at this moment, at the edge of the continent, there were some grooves that looked like the shape of a turtle. Above each groove, there was a several thousand zhang 33 m per zhang, transparent crystal cover. Some of the crystal covers had floating dragon generals. Some of the crystal covers were empty. There were no dragon generals guarding them. See, this is the Dragon Island? Xiaohua sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He couldn't help but be shocked. Damn it, this Xiao always thought that the Dragon Island was somewhere in the four seas. It was an island. But I really didn't expect. This Dragon Island was actually at the bottom of the sea. Of course, the dragon tribe was originally a water tribe. How could they live without water? They naturally thought that the Dragon Island was an island in the eyes of the human tribe. That was because they didn't break away from the human tribe's thinking. They thought that the dragon tribe also lived in the air like the human tribe. In fact, in the eyes of the dragon tribe, isn't the seawater air in the eyes of the human tribe? It would be strange if the Dragon Island was really an island. Thinking of this, Xiaohua hastily raised his hand and took out the mountain river seal. His mind shook, and he pulled Ao Moyin out of the space. At this moment, not only was Xiaohua surprised, Ao Zhantian and the others were also surprised. No one had noticed Ao Moyin's quiet appearance. She then looked at Ao Moyin again. Ao Moyin had suddenly appeared inside the traveling dragon's den, and the Dragon Island's strange phenomenon caught her eye. How could she not know that Xiaohua had safely delivered her to the Dragon Island? She only nodded slightly at Xiaohua, and didn't say a word. Xiaohua smiled. This kind of woman who was so calm could really be the commander of an army. In the traveling Dragon Island, most of the survivors of the human tribe and the demon tribe were surprised. When they came to their senses and were about to use the escape technique to leave the traveling Dragon Island, they suddenly found that they couldn't even move their bodies. Wuxia gorgeous dragon pattern appeared from the crystal cover and fell on top of everyone's head. Then, the dragon envoy who controlled the traveling Dragon Island strangely appeared out of thin air. He opened his mouth and spat out the same dragon pattern to meet the gorgeous dragon pattern. Swish! The moment the two dragon patterns merged, a cluster of colorful light emerged from the dragon pattern and covered the dragon envoy. The dragon envoy's body shrank rapidly, turning into the size of the dragon pattern, and disappeared into the dragon pattern. Then, the dragon pattern rushed to the crystal cover. As soon as it came into contact, the entire crystal cover was instantly dyed blood red. Roar! A huge dragon roar passed through the heavy seawater and fell into the crystal cover. Xiaohua and the others felt their blood tremble. Several ochre yellow dragons that were 3 times bigger than the dragon envoy flew over from the other crystal covers and surrounded the blood-red crystal cover. Xiaohua and the others understood that this must be the signal sent by the dragon envoy. These dragons must have come to arrest the brutal murderer in the traveling Dragon Island. Sure enough, the dragon pattern passed through the crystal cover. The dragon envoy revealed his body from the dragon pattern and said something to the 3 dragons. The dragon's body twisted in the seawater and immediately disappeared. The 3 dragons shook their bodies and opened their mouths. 3 dragon pearls flew out. These 3 dragon pearls gave off 3 different kinds of luster. They mixed in the seawater and turned into a huge net that completely covered the groove where the crystal cover was. Other than the eyes, no one's yuanshan could detect it. In just a moment, a few more dragons came from the mountain range in the distance. The dragon in front had a golden crown on its dragon horn. This dragon flew to the top of everyone's head and opened its mouth. A dragon breath as vast as the sea of smoke rolled and covered the groove. Within this dragon breath, the previous 3 dragon pearls' brilliance faded and slowly flew away. You can open it now. The dragon commanded very majestically. Yes, General. The 3 dragons responded. The 3 dragon pearls gave off 3 different rhythmic fluctuations. The fluctuations entangled together and fell towards the crystal cover. Once the crystal cover came into contact with the fluctuations, it immediately melted like ice water touching a raging fire. Xiaohua and the others felt the previous imprisonment slowly disappear. Then, he looked at the 9 dragons that had just arrived with Longjiang. They immediately arranged themselves into a profound formation, surrounding all the humans and demons in the middle. That dizzying dragon breath rushed over. Even someone as strong as Xiaohua couldn't help but tremble. He couldn't help but groan in his heart. Damn it, how can we live like this? Just 9 random soldiers have the strength of upper 6th grade essence energy. This dragon general is probably intermediate 7th grade essence energy, right? Chapter 3996. Hold on. Come out one by one. Under the dragon's might, everyone's body and mind felt extremely heavy. The giant dragon's order was like a god's voice echoing in their hearts. The humans and demons did not dare to dawdle. They walked out one by one according to the order of the grooves. Every time a human or demon walked out of the grooves, an inexplicable wave would sweep across his body. However, even after all the humans and demons had left the crystal barrier, the giant dragon did not discover anything. Strange, the giant dragon muttered. He looked into the grooves again. At this moment, the grooves were empty. There was nothing but discarded corpses. Whoosh! At this moment, a watery light flashed. The dragon envoy flew over and asked anxiously, "General, did you discover anything?" "No," the giant dragon replied. "I've carefully checked the dragon line. There is no murderer like you said. This bastard must have used some kind of concealment technique to hide," the dragon envoy said through gritted teeth. "And this concealment technique is especially powerful. I can't find him even with the help of the dragon line. Since the concealment technique is so powerful, Could he have escaped first and not followed the dragon line into Dragon Island? The giant dragon asked. The dragon envoy shook his head. That's impossible. Although I can't use the dragon line to find this bastard, I still control the dragon line. However, I am still in control of the traveling dragon. I can still prevent him from escaping from the traveling dragon. He must be inside the dragon line. That's strange. Don't tell me he can escape from my dragon breath? The giant dragon frowned. He thought for a moment, then ordered. Take out these corpses and seal the dragon line. I'll send the dragon line to Fourth Elder. I'd like to see what kind of concealment technique this is. Yes. The dragon soldiers obeyed the order. With a wave of their dragon claws, all the corpses were thrown to one side of the crystal barrier. Then, as several dragon pearls flashed, the multicolored dragon pattern appeared again, and landed on the crystal barrier. The dragon rune penetrated the crystal barrier, and produced a rumbling sound. Then, another dark green water droplet was born from the crystal barrier. After the dragon formation was sealed, the dragon general raised his dragon claw, and made a grabbing motion in the air. The crystal shield flew out from the groove, and the dragon formation shrunk to a size of 1,000 feet, and fell into the dragon general's claw. Then, without even looking at the dragon descendants, the dragon general's body emitted a watery light, and was about to flee. As for the other 9 dragon soldiers, they also moved their dragon bodies at the same time, preparing to escape with the dragon general. At this moment, Xiaohua, who was standing on the dragon island, was suddenly startled. His gaze fell on the corpse in the distance, and he seemed to have thought of something. Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Ao Moyun at the side shouted loudly, "My lord, take a look at those corpses first. Who knows if there's a murderer who faked his death?" Ah, how is that possible? When they saw Ao Moyun's strange appearance, Ao Zhantian and the others were all surprised. However, none of them dared to ask too much. Now that Ao Moyun reminded them, everyone came to a realization and looked at those corpses in unison. Roar! Before everyone's gaze fell, 3 beastly roars came from the corpses. The dragon python Didiki and Jing Hong, who were the first to be killed, suddenly rushed out of the corpses. Their bodies flashed with watery light, and they fled toward the dragon island in a panic. Roar! The dragon envoy who was in charge of the dragon formation was furious. He really didn't expect that the murderers who had caused so much bloodshed in the dragon formation in the past few months were actually the 3 demon clans who were killed first. He had painstakingly monitored the entire dragon formation, and paid attention to the movements of the other living humans and demon clans at all times. However, he just so happened to miss the location of the discarded corpses. No wonder he couldn't find the murderers no matter how hard he tried. Enraged, the dragon envoy was about to give chase. However, the dragon general was twice as fast as him. Just as the dragon envoy's body swayed, the dragon general's body had already stirred up the water and disappeared. Then a series of thunderclaps came from the mountain range in the distance. A layer of huge waves surged out of the calm sea. Along with these huge waves, 3 extremely disheveled demon clans appeared. Just as the dragon python revealed itself, the bloody light around its body flourished. Dragon chi gushed out from this bloody light. The bloody light mixed with the dragon chi, and actually condensed into a huge dragon that was comparable to the dragon general. Roar! The dragon python roared loudly. A dragon claw slashed through the water and through space, striking the dragon general who was pouncing toward it. The dragon general seemed to be caught off guard. His whole body was hit by the dragon claw and fell to the ground with a loud boom sound. But in an instant, the dragon general's dragon tail flashed in the sea and smashed on the dragon python's head with a bang sound. The dragon python's body rolled a few times in the water. Once again, it flashed and escaped towards a mountain range. Looking at Didiki and Jinghong, their bodies were even more agile. Before the dragon envoy and the 9 dragon soldiers could catch up, they had already escaped in 2 other directions. It was obvious that this was a plan that the 3 demon clans had long discussed. Wu dragon chi gushed out from the dragon envoy and the 9 dragon soldiers. 10 dragon pearls shot out. Small whirlpools appeared in the water thousands of feet around them. Wisps of pure water elemental energy surged towards the dragon pearls. The 10 dragon pearls grew to several feet in size. They split into 3 groups and chased after the 3 demon clans. GGG looking at the 3 demon clans escaping. The dragon general who was supposed to be the most capable of capturing them didn't use his escape technique. Instead, he stirred up dragon chi in the water. Streaks of dragon patterns surged towards his horns. When he opened his dragon mouth, a series of inexplicable dragon language came out of his mouth. Once the dragon language appeared, the water elemental energy within 100 miles of him immediately disappeared. It rushed into the dragon language at an unbelievable speed. Then, the dragon language brought about layers of light and shadows. The sound of huge waves rushed in the direction of the 3 demon clans escaping. Xiaohua didn't know what others felt, but as a Taoist cultivator, even though he was at the bottom of the sea, he was extremely sensitive to the changes in the water elemental energy. Previously, when the dragon pearls stirred up the water elemental energy, his heart was only moved. But when this dragon general actually chanted the dragon language and stirred up the water elemental energy, how could he not be shocked? Don't all demon clans cultivate the power of the moon and stars? This dragon general, how could he stir up the water elemental energy? Moreover, why is his dragon language so similar to the Green Seal script? No, it should be said that this dragon language is extremely similar to my Taoist cultivation technique. Xiaohua thought. When he looked at the place where Long Yu disappeared, the seawater within a few hundred li radius had been confined. This confinement power was really too strong. Even the void was covered. Long Mang and the other 2 demonic beast experts who possessed 7th grade essence power exerted all their strength to twist their bodies. Although the confinement within 1,000 zhang radius was broken by them, the seawater within a few hundred li radius was like a cage that firmly locked them in place. Roar the dragon general let out a dragon roar that shook the wilderness. This dragon roar was abnormally clear in the seawater. Following the dragon roar, the dragon general opened his mouth and a dragon shell fell into the water. The dragon general's claws continuously grabbed at the void, and the 3 demon clan experts who were not inferior to him, Long Mang, Di Dicky, and Jinghong, were captured by him into the dragon shell. They were almost powerless to resist. Alright, as the dragon general kept the dragon shell, the imprisonment within several hundred li of the seawater disappeared again. The dragon general ordered, "Carefully search these descendants of my clan. This general is going to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall to meet the 4th elder, and report this matter to him. All of you be careful. Don't let any unforeseen events occur." "Yes, General." The 9 dragon soldiers at the side answered and respectfully sent the dragon general off. Xiaohua looked at the scene in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. He didn't expect that the dragon general of the Dragon Island would give him a vivid lesson. As soon as he set foot on the Dragon Island, he saw a secret of heaven and earth that he couldn't even dream of. Mr. Mayan. Xiaohua looked at the dragon envoy flying over with the 9 dragon soldiers, and whispered to Ao Moyen through voice transmission. Did you see that?" Ao Moyen asked curiously. "See what?" That dragon general just used. What kind of magic art?" Xiaohua didn't know how to explain the doubts in his heart. After all, this was the magic art of the Taoism cultivators. He originally wanted to ask Ao Zhantian, but looking at Ao Zhantian's dumbfounded expression, he probably didn't know as much as Ao Moyun. Ao Moyun pursed his lips and smiled. This dragon general didn't use a magic art. Instead, it was the heavenly dragon technique unique to the Dragon Island. Heavenly dragon technique? Xiaohua was puzzled. This heavenly dragon technique, why does it activate the spiritual energy of heaven and earth of our Taoism? This concubine doesn't know. Ao Moyin shrugged charmingly and said with a smile, "This is the secret art of the Dragon Island. Not to mention that we descendants of the dragon blood don't know. Even the ordinary dragon generals of the dragon race of the Four Seas can't learn it." At this point, Ao Moyin rolled her eyes again and said, "There are some vague records in this concubine's jade eyes, but if you don't want, give it to me." Xiaohua stretched out his hand unceremoniously and said, "At that time, this Xiao was afraid that you would give up on yourself. Now this Xiao obviously wants it. Hee, even if you want it now, this concubine doesn't want to give it to you." Ao Moyin laughed and looked at Xiaohua with a smile. Xiaohua curled his lips and glanced at Ao Moyen and said, "Ungrateful." Ao Moyen couldn't help laughing. She really didn't expect that Xiaohua, who had such a high cultivation, would occasionally have such a cute side. How was this the usual high and mighty attitude of a Confucian cultivator? Amidst her laughter, Ao Moyen took out the jade eyes and quietly gave it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua also unceremoniously took it and sent it into the space. At this time, 10 huge dragons flew over. In addition to the 3 dragons that were patrolling earlier, there were already 13 huge dragons surrounding the nearly 2,000 dragon blood descendants. Cough cough, the dragon envoy withdrew his dragon body and turned into 100 feet in size. Standing in the sea in front of everyone, he coughed and said, "Everyone, although the 3 damned things, Dragon Python, Dicky and Jinghong, have been sent to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, General Long Shou is right. Who knows if there are any accomplices among you? Now before we go to the Dragon Island, we need to carefully check again that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.